Welcome to Mallorca, Spain and the beautiful Bay of Palma. It's the 2019 Rolex World Championship here in Puerto. Over the next 5 days, 11 top international teams are scheduled to sail 10 races on fast, very competitive TP52 monohulls. For the 5th year running, Mallorcan waters will again fully test teamwork, tactics, sailing skills and boat speed. And as far as the 52 Super Series itself goes, the 3 events contested so far have gone down to a single point. So you can pretty much guarantee that the racing will be full on to the final day. No quarter will be given nor asked on the race course, but on land the ambience is relaxed in this popular upscale marina destination. And all 11 teams have something to prove, and just as in every other sport in the world, everyone wants to win a World Championship title. Now let's go on the water. It's day 2 of racing for the Rolex TP52 World Championship Puerto 2019. Well, a very warm welcome back to Puerto on the sunshine island of Mallorca. Not quite as sunny today as it was yesterday, but still super hot and super sticky onshore. On the water today, we should expect 2 good races. We had 2 good races yesterday, a little bit of drama here and there. James West, an interesting first day, wasn't it?
Oh, very interesting first day, Andy, and well, a great way to kick off the week. Very light conditions, as you said, very hot conditions, but the racing was exciting nonetheless, and quite frankly, a nice little shake-up in the standings as well.
Indeed, we'll look at the standings for the circuit in just a moment. But it was a great day for Tina Plattner and the team on board Phoenix 12. 2 third places brought them ashore as leaders of the World Championship. Let's look at the standings. So at the top of the table, I said Phoenix 12, the older of the 2 Phoenix boats, the Plattner family boats, are top of the table with 2 third places yesterday. They're 2 points up on the defending world champions. Quantum Racing won in Cascais last year. They started out with a good first place with Doug DeVos on the helm, making his debut this season, then a 7th, so they are second, 2 points behind Phoenix 12. Platoon, the 2017 world champions, well, pretty consistent yesterday. 4 and a 5 is a pretty solid work for 9 points. Sled, first in the second race, paired to 9th place, gives them 10 points. Phoenix 11, well, as said, a red letter day really for the Phoenix teams, coming 2nd and 3rd behind Sled yesterday. So Hasselplattner's team in 5th. Azura, well, they have some work to do in 6th. They're 2 times world champions and still the circuit leaders, but they're on 11 points, 5 points behind the leaders. Then Brunanasek in 7th. Team Vision Future are French debutantes this year. This is their 2nd regatta of the season, and they were pretty happy to come ashore with a 7th and a 6th yesterday. Allegra in 8th place, 9th place Gladiator, and Provezza then, unfortunately, that incident yesterday, they lost their mast during the second upwind, start of the second upwind, James, wasn't it? But the good news is that they're all guns blazing trying to get the mast, our new mast, to us here in Palma.
Yeah, and unfortunately for the Provezza team, it's not the way you want to start the regatta, you know, with losing the mast in the first race. And as you can see from the replay here, they were in a really good position actually in race 1. This is the second mark as they round. They've got Gladiator right on their heels. And as they made a dig out to the right-hand side, it was looking very competitive. And just on the left-hand side of the picture, you can see that rig coming down. And, well, that was it for race 1 for Provezza. But I think a full credit is to the shore team that have got the replacement mast from Valencia already here in Palma and doing their best to get that thing rigged and ready to go.
That's the case. I mean, there was no obvious reason why the mast came down. We spoke with Guy Barron, who's the unflappable, super cool boat captain and the project manager for the Provezza. And Guy told us that things are very much under control. The mast is here and they're hoping to get afloat very soon. So this was Guy when we spoke to him earlier.
Yeah, well, we have a spare mast. It was in Valencia, so we got it out of our yard there and got it on a ferry last night. Arrived here at 7:30 this morning, and we've got a team of guys in SDP at the moment working on it and dressing it. Spreaders are on, side ring is going on at the moment, and I've just come back over here to pick the boat up, and hopefully in an hour and a half we might have it standing up in the boat.
Hoping to go racing today then?
Well, yeah. It would be really nice. I think you might see us out there. If you see us join for the second race, it will be pretty amazing.
What's the mood in the team?
Yeah, I can't say it's great, but yeah, happy enough. We're happy that we got the spare mast here, and we're happy that we're going to be able to get back into it. Make sure we don't hemorrhage too many points by not being on the race course.
And loads of support on the dock.
Yeah, for sure. All the other boat captains have contacted me. It's almost too much. I've, my phone's going off all the time with everybody wishing and trying to help and anything they can do. So it's really nice. I mean, that's a good thing with the TP fleet. Everybody helps each other out. Any spares anybody needs. But so far, touch wood, we've got it all sorted.
So indeed, fingers crossed for the Provezza team. Guy Barron there, unflappable, not making a drama out of a crisis. But the racing story yesterday was very much Tina Plattner and the team on the Phoenix 12 topping the table. We caught up with Tina and we caught up with Abby Ayler before they went afloat. Will they be able to sustain the performance under pressure today?
Yeah, I think we had a good day. Cam made some really nice decisions on the race course. The boat, I think, was quite suited to the wind strength we had yesterday. So, yeah, we're quite happy with the start. And now it's obviously another 4 tough days to come. So let's see how it goes.
How do you cope with the pressure?
Trying to forget about it and try to block it out and wear blinkers like a race, because it does get to me every now and then. And the guys are really good to just tell me, oh, Tina, just sail your own race, do your own thing. So, yeah, we'll see.
So, Abby, a great opening yesterday for the Phoenix teams.
Indeed, yeah. Both boats had great results, and especially for Tina, who's now leading the fleet. So, fantastic, yeah. Very happy.
What's the mood like in the camp? Was it expected to reach that level so quickly?
No, I don't think we really set ourselves any expectations. So to come out with one boat on the top of the leaderboard is just, is a great result on day one. But the important thing is still a long way to go, and whether we can maintain that.
Behind the scenes, there's been a lot of hard work gone into the team this season. Give us a little bit of an insight into that, what you've been doing and when.
Well, obviously running a 2-boat programme is a pretty big undertaking, and both with Tina and with Hasso we've had numerous training events starting in Palma at the beginning of the year, and I think even before then in Valencia the boats were out training. Great team spirit amongst the 2 boats, lots of banter as you can imagine, and yeah, very supporting. So even though we're out there racing against each other, we're equally as supportive once we get ashore.
And we're moving to South Africa for the first 2 events next year. Is there a prospect of winning there perhaps? Is there pressure on?
Well, of course, I think competing in your hometown, you always want to be winning. But I think the most important thing for Tina and for Hasso will be to make sure that the fleet has great racing and that they have a great experience in their hometowns.
Well, that's Abby Ayler from the Phoenix 11 boat telling us about the prospects of going racing next year in South Africa. Great situation for the fleet. Looking forward to some new racing waters. But Jenny Tulloch underwater here in the Bay of Palma, back to earth if you like. How are things looking on the water?
If you had asked that question 45 minutes ago, I think you would have known the answer. It was flat, calm, glassy, and we were sort of thinking, no way we could go racing on time. And then here you go. There's nice. It's almost 6 to 8 knots at the moment. I think the reality is, you said it at the beginning of the broadcast, it was well overcast earlier this morning, and we thought with the gradient breeze much stronger, it would take a lot longer for the sea breeze to build. And what we saw was that it was midday, there was no wind, the sea breeze had just killed off the gradient. But what's really nice, and I'm sure you guys are feeling this on shore, is it's so hot on shore that the sea breeze is now building quite quickly. And I think that means we'll actually see even more pressure throughout the afternoon, more wind than yesterday, and really nice racing out here.
And Jenny, the positioning of the course in the bay, you appear to be a little bit further to the left, perhaps in front of the cathedral?
Yeah, we are. And in fact, it means we're a little bit closer to what's essentially a point out on the left-hand side of the race course. So yesterday we were slightly closer to the shoreline on the right. We saw really good right shifts and right pressure up at the top of the course. Today, maybe at the bottom of the course, we could see this left side come into play. I'm not sure if the teams are thinking that. I think after seeing all 4 upwinds yesterday, the right side paying off, I think we probably should see a really good battle for the boat and the right-hand side here. But it is definitely a tiny bit of a different situation. That makes it harder for the navigation and the strategists.
So that's your strategy for the day, Jen?
I don't know if I've got a strategy for the day. I mean, our boat here will be heading up and down the right-hand side, so we think we're going to be closest to the action.
Here's hoping.
And I just kind of love, yeah, here's hoping on that. But I love you guys were just talking about Tina and Abby Ayler, and I think I had said yesterday my heart had them had them winning this regatta. And I love that they're sitting on top of the leaderboard now. I know I spoke to Abby on the dock before she went sailing. I know she's really happy to get back into this sort of racing after having done the last 2 Volvos and been racing around the world. It's such a different kind of really intense, really close fleet racing. So it's going to be good to see them going at it again today.
And holding her own on the mid-bow position.
Exactly, very much so holding her own there.
And what do you think Tina Plattner and the team have to do today? Just carry on doing what they were doing yesterday, really try and take each day as it comes?
You know, I think it's really interesting. We spoke with Cameron Dunn, their tactician on board Phoenix 12, so Tina's tactician yesterday. And the same happened last season when she stepped into it. She's really, really confident in talking about how nervous she is. And that is the juxtaposition that it sounds like, that she's absolutely capable of saying, I don't know, I'm nervous here. And yet he said that the cracks never show outwardly, that she always is able to perform every maneuver perfectly, exactly consistently, the way you would want any helmsman. And I think the reality is that's what they need to do today. Tina just needs to, even as nervous as she is, needs to perform as a helmsman, keep it consistent, and then the team will keep placing them in the right positions, and then they might still be at the top of the leaderboard.
And the other interesting thing that we've picked up, both from Ed Baird, who obviously worked with her last year, I think, and also from Cameron, is that she's a great learner in the sense that she only needs to be told the subtleties once and she follows to the letter. And that's a fantastic asset in that situation, isn't it?
I think the way Ed phrased it last year, he said she doesn't have any bad habits we have to break. So it was exactly that. Yeah, she's constantly soaking up the information that they're feeding. And of course, these guys are the top of the game, the best in the world. And so for her to be able to come in as a sponge and just take any info and then the next time be able to execute on it the way that she had just been taught, I think that's a huge testament to a great owner driver and a great driver in general. I mean, sometimes pros are not capable of doing the consistency that it sounds like Tina's been able to perform here. So yeah, a huge credit to her, and I think to the team and the program, as Abby was explaining, they've got a really good program. They've got the 2 boats. They've done a ton of training this year, so we can't lose sight of the fact that just those hours on the water and that ability to learn with every hour out there is really helping them for both boats to perform and be at the top.
And a bunch of guys on board who are very experienced and pretty unflappable. I say we were talking yesterday about the likes of Tom Burnham, but also like Mark Legesse and Cameron himself, Jerry Mitchell. They're all pretty quiet, fairly reserved guys on the boat. There's no shouting, I don't think, and that really helps Tina keep her focus.
Yeah, I think in general, again, this fleet has so many America's Cup sailors, Volvo sailors, Olympic sailors. It's almost too many to count. We might need to go and count it sometime, Andy, but it is too many to count. And in terms of the Phoenix boat as well, they've got plenty of talent. And like you said, the ability to then allow that talent to keep the communication to a minimum is what helps a new driver and a new owner kind of be able to keep their cool when things get really tight. And I think you would see on a less experienced team, maybe some yelling, maybe some raised voices, not even yelling, but just the temperature rises when the scenarios get close. And like we saw yesterday, there was a lot of close sailing out there, and the more that you can keep it cool, the better you can keep the back of the boat relaxed, the better the whole team can communicate. And I think, yeah, you alluded to Tommy Byrne and the pitman on board, but sometimes that is the job of the crew boss to make sure that what's happening on the bow through to the middle into the back is staying in formation, whatever that formation might be, and also is staying calm and cool and collected. And often we overlook those guys, the crew bosses, and sometimes they're the pitmen, sometimes it's someone else on board, but that is such a key, crucial role to then be able to make sure the team is performing well, both with its executions and its maneuvers, and also with its tactics and its strategy and its navigation. Because even the brain trust, the afterguard, they need to kind of keep a cool head, as well as the drivers. And if there's a lot of yelling on board, they're maybe not making their best decisions either.
And great to see there's still a little bit of rivalry, or family rivalry between the two. We've spoken to numerous sailors over the past couple of days, and they all say there's no team orders on the water. It's every man, every woman for themselves in terms of the 2 different boats, isn't it?
Yeah, Cameron very much said no love lost at all between these 2 on the water, which I think is great. I mean, we saw them start next to each other both races, but it was just because the teams had the same strategy. You know, they wanted the right in the first race, and they talked about and liked the left in the second race, and then they were fighting each other for those spots. And I think reality is they go home and they debrief. They've got nothing closed behind the doors when the 2 teams are debriefing together, but out on the water, it's every man and woman for themselves. And we've seen who's taken the first bite of the apple, but but maybe the dad can replay and get back into the punch today as well.
And a good start yesterday from Quantum Racing. We were on board with them very briefly there. Doug DeVos slotting back into the team, having not sailed this year on the race boat. But the second race really cost them a little bit. They need to get back onto the first race form, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that's really hard. I think we spoke about it briefly yesterday.
Yeah.
You'd always love to have a bad race at the beginning and a good race to end the day, just mentally.
If you have to have a bad race.
Exactly, yeah. I spoke to Doug about that on land, and he was like, I know, it was so great to win, but then we had a not a good one, basically. And I think though, still, for him to come in and mentally have been away from this fleet for almost a year now, he hasn't been racing since this fleet since Valencia last year, which was the season ender. So I think the reality to come back in, to have a good enough start, and then to win race one is a huge, huge confidence boost. And to follow that up with a bad race, fine. It happens. But I think still, he came off the water beaming. You saw him. It's like he couldn't be happier to be out here on the water in this series. He loves it.
Absolutely. Such a fountain of energy is Doug DeVos. But Sled had a good second race, one good, one bad one, same as the Quantum Racing. We caught up with Andrea Vicentini, who's the navigator on the Sled, and he gave us a little bit of insight into how the weather hopefully is going to play out today. But he said it was going to be a little bit more complex. This was Andrea just a few hours ago.
Well, today it will be a little bit different from the previous days. We have this strong gradient from the east flowing inside into the bay. So we're looking at a scenario where there will be more breeze on the left side of the bay. So it will be really important to see where the race course will be placed. And it will be a little bit more lefty than the other days, still clicking a little bit right, so maybe a little bit more pressure. We learned a lot from the first race, from the mistakes we made on the first race, and then we had a pretty clear idea on the second race what we had to do, and we were lucky at the start. We performed a good start, and it all went well, so from there on.
But generally this race course in the Bay of Palma is not easy.
No, it's not easy because a lot of times it's a one-way course. So a lot is decided at the start. In the pre-start, you have just to decide on which side you want to play the race. And it's difficult for this. And then you add all the shifts which can just come in, and it's really difficult to read them on the water. And so it gets tricky the other way.
So Sled lying in fourth after a ninth and a first yesterday, and they should be able to get back onto the racecourse shortly. Hopefully the breeze is going to fill in. We're still with a slight bit of a delay. James, who are your movers and shakers today? I mean, Sled, as I said, a little bit inconsistent, but showing some strong form in the second race. Who else are you going to be watching today?
Yeah, I think we saw a little bit of a pattern really building. The teams that we have seen on the top of the table in previous events have both had a great race and a not so good race. And I think we saw obviously Quantum having quite a consistent day, and obviously Tina Plattner and the Phoenix team having a very consistent day with 2/3. But we're looking at Azura, some of the guys that have been pipped to win out here.
They need to really get the wheels back on, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it's just maybe something to do with the fleet, but I feel like you can't really drop the ball here. You've got 10 other teams that can just absolutely send you to the back of the fleet.
That's right. I mean, one of the teams, obviously Azura, but Brunenisek as well, a little bit inconsistent. They had that problem at the first time up, and that cost them. They came back into it, but it did unsettle them, I think, for the day, and they got an 8th in the second race. But they're a team who have been up there, and they really need to start getting back to the front of the fleet in these races today.
Yeah, Brunenisek, obviously in the newest boat in the fleet, a very, very quick boat we've seen in the past, and as you mentioned, getting caught up at the top mark in a bit of a luffing match with Platoon, and then getting the penalty really did put them back. But I think we saw as that race played out, we did see them fight back, and I think they clicked into a mode where it's just, okay, it's not great for us, but we're going to do the best we can, and they really did get into fast mode and got themselves back into the middle of the fleet.
Indeed, Platoon very much in contention, lying in third place, just 3 points behind the leaders. So let's watch and see once we get racing. Let's have a look back to how things played out yesterday. This is our highlights. It's high summer and welcome to the Sunshine Island of Mallorca. We're back with the 52 Super Series in Puerto, one of our favourite destinations. We're here for the Rolex 52 World Championship. We have 11 teams and 8 nations represented, and it's going to be a fantastic week.
Be a World Championship for this class is amazing because this is the Formula One of the sailing or the monohulls. For me, it's the most important class.
The defending world champions are Quantum Racing, who won the world title in Cascais. Big changes on board Quantum Racing. They have their talismanic owner driver back. Doug DeVos is steering.
You know, I've never been on the boat when we've won. The boat's won, but I've only competed in a few. For whatever reason, the schedule hasn't worked out for me to be able to participate, so I'm thrilled to be here and have this chance this week. It's wonderful. It's so much fun. When you sneak away for a while to do a few other things, you come back to the boat, you come back to the fleet, and you recognize just how special this is.
Race 1 gets away in a light sea breeze, 8 to 9 knots on the start line. The boats at the pin end start best with the early advantage. Quantum Racing make a pretty decent start, get out to the right of the course early on, and are just able to lead Azura round the top mark. There's a big drama at the top mark. Platoons start off by shooting the mark. Renesec are affected and have to shoot also, but they get stuck and backwinded, and behind them Allegri are badly affected. Renesec have to do turns and end up 10th round the leeward gate. On the second beat, Provezza's mast crumples suddenly with no real explanation, and a race against time to make a replacement starts for them. Through the finish line then it's Quantum Racing winning, Azura second, the Phoenix 12 get third, Platoon fourth, and Renesec make a nice recovery to get up to fifth.
It was fabulous. Yeah, I mean, kind of get back in the fleet, find your way around. It felt pretty good.
We're not too sure what broke, but obviously something broke that caused the mast to fail. It's too hard to tell at this point in time because it happens so quick. We're very fortunate we've got a spare rig, an older rig that's in Valencia, and I think the boys are working pretty hard now to try and get that to here to Palma.
Second race is just a little bit more breeze on the start line, probably 10 knots. The best start is certainly that of Sled, who come off the committee boat end of the line, get to the right early with Allegri. Quantum Racing make a bad start and are on the back foot early on, but at the top mark the lead is with Sled. Phoenix 11 are second, Phoenix 12 in third, and that's the way it stays round the course. It's the first race win this season for Sled. Second place is with Phoenix 11. Phoenix 12 in third lead the World Championship.
Yeah, it was great. We got a good start and sailed pretty well most of the race, kept ahead the whole way. I think we're in pretty good shape. The boat seems to be going well and we just got to settle down and do our thing.
The secret of the day today was just to go out and try and do our jobs as well as we can and keep the boat going fast. It's a tough fleet out there and every inch counts, and it's a really nice way to start the event. It's really good.
After 2 races then at the Rolex TP52 World Championship, first place is with the Phoenix 12, Tina Plattner on 6 points, second Quantum Racing on 8 points, and third Platoon on 9 points. Well, the first day of racing in the Rolex TP52 World Championships, a red letter day for the Phoenix team. Tina Plattner and co leading the World Championship after the first day. 2 very good races, light sea breeze conditions. We should see more of the same tomorrow, and a battle, a race against time for the Provezza team to replace their mast. So that's how it played out yesterday. 2 good races, fairly light sea breezes, 9 to 10 knots on average. Probably the same today. We're just on hold. The race course is being laid and the teams are just checking the first windward leg. Starts are so important. Meantime, sustainability is such an important part of our DNA. It's a growing mission for us really on the 52 Super Series and at this Rolex TP52 World Championship. Last year we had a number of different initiatives, and let's have a little look back, a recap of what we did last year. Later on in the day we'll have Lars Birking, our sustainability officer, in the hot seat here with me, and he'll update us what we're doing this year. But this is very much last year. Sustainability, an increasingly important element of our very DNA of the 52 Super Series, remains front of mind.
2050, there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than there is fish, and you know, for me that was a really telling fact because my children are only going to be 34 when that rolls around, and you know, this is our playground, and I think that's something that we really need to protect. So it's time for talking's over, and now it's time for action.
It's amazing to see the awareness that's starting to happen about the plastic in the ocean and the junk. We see it every day, but most people don't. and you think that it's just a dumping ground and it disappears, but it's just not the truth. And it's really cool for me to see the world starting to realize that.
We deliver practical, positive behaviours to influence others worldwide.
It's important, especially for our kids, to get knowledge about environment issues, and what they learn today is the 3-item rule. So every time when they come to the beach, to pick up 3 items and take them to the trash.
We travel all over the world and you see a lot of trash in all these different beautiful locations. So if these kids can learn to eliminate the trash altogether so it never washes up on these awesome beaches, it's a huge step forward.
And we develop smart initiatives bubbling up from our teams.
Our goal in the whole system is to make it easier to use water from the dock than to go out and buy plastic water bottles. So if we provide a usable filter that's easy to carry, easy to move around, then people won't want to go buy water bottles, so this will be easier.
It's probably been a few years since I've actually been in this fleet, and to come back into it now and just see the progress that's been made in the sustainability front I think is really, really positive, and it's exciting times.
What we've got to remember is that every little bit helps, and as we say on our boat, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, as you say, every little bit helps, and there's new initiatives coming from the fleet all the way through this season, and strategy in place for the future. But James, something, we talked about pragmatic solutions. We have the blue water filter system, which is just a matter of a couple of 100 metres or so to our left. It's in use all the way through the day now, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a great initiative, and I was introduced to it a couple of years ago with the Volvo Ocean Race, and I think what it does is it gets this initiative in front of the public. As you mentioned, we do see people using it from around about 7:30 in the morning. The teams are there filling up their team water bottles, and it is right in the face of the public as well. People coming through the race village, checking out the boats and the teams, will see this station here in front of them, and they think, well, free water, here we go. And it really...
But it does make you think that more marinas should have, or more of these kind of destinations like these marinas and so on, should have these water stations. I mean, I've seen the little bit in Europe and different places that you go, but this water station in particular is just beside a beach. You see people coming off the beach with their own water bottles now and filling them up, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and that's exactly who they want to target. And you look behind us, and we've got all these incredible super yachts behind us as well. And it's great to try and get that side of the marine industry into this the sustainability message that we're trying to portray.
Indeed. So we're hoping to join Lars Bucking. He'll come in between the two races and give us a little bit of an update. Our sustainability officer, very hard driving. Lars is at the forefront of our initiatives, and as I say, we're really starting to get more and more coming from the fleet. On the water, we have Jenny Tulloch, who will hopefully give us a little bit of an update how things are progressing. Jenny, is it looking a little bit better?
God, looks stunning out here, Andy. I mean, we said 45 minutes ago it was glass, and then about 10 minutes ago it was 6 to 8, and I would say it is already 10 to 11 knots. We've got white caps at the moment. So I think the reality is the race committee is just waiting for the breeze to stabilize in direction a little bit. She said about 5 minutes ago they're hoping to go for a 120 start, but I think there was something like 30-degree wind shifts, and that was what the most recent postponements have been, just waiting for it to stabilize just a little so that we can get some really good racing off. I mean, we did see wind shifts yesterday as well. They just weren't quite as huge as 30 degrees. So we're kind of expecting when it fills in, I think it's from 190 right now, so a little bit more south than southwest, and the typical sea breeze, it's just a little bit more southwest. So yesterday we were racing about 210, 215, and somewhere in between those two it'll stabilize and we'll get off. But the reality is it's going to look fabulous out here this afternoon. The teams are all fired up. I think probably the first team to go racing the first team to get ready to go racing about 45 minutes ago was the two Quantum Racing sail boat. So it's Quantum Racing and then Team Vision Future, who looks at the moment like Quantum Racing's twin with just orange stripes instead of neon stripes. So my assumption there is that they've maybe bought an older set of Quantum sails, because we know it's the team that's got slightly less pros on board and is a bit more having fun out here as well as racing hard. And yet those two teams both raring to go the second there was the tiniest bit of breeze. Everyone was out here with their tents covering their heads, trying to stay out of the sun, and then a whiff of breeze, and the two Quantum teams went full upwind racing hard. So we know Doug DeVos is chomping at the bit today. He wants to get probably not just one more bullet on the board, maybe two, but all the rest have followed suit. Everyone's got mainsails up. We've seen a couple different jib changes actually recently, because I think really it is now kind of a question mark again whether you would go with a light jib or a light medium. It's definitely building to almost more than our second race was yesterday. And everyone's gone up and down the track. We saw again Quantum go all the way to the top mark earlier. We saw a couple of other teams just go kind of halfway up and come back down, and now they've all been running their pings on the start line, and they're all just chomping at the bit at the moment, Andy.
Indeed, you mentioned Team Vision Future momentarily there. 7 and a 6 yesterday. They came ashore in 8th place, and they were very happy with that. You know, they just want to carry on doing the same, maybe a little bit better. But as I said, they came here just saying we don't want to be last. And 7 and a 6 yesterday. They were well up in that second race, weren't they, Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, for a team that's new to racing here, that's not totally pros, that doesn't have the team dynamics of the other guys racing together for years or having competed in America's Cups and Volvo Ocean races, I think to be able to even be playing in the field and being well in the mix. Yesterday, at a point when they were about 7th or 8th, we were talking about how well that they were doing because they were well in the mix. And I think I'm glad that they came in happy. I think it's easy to look at a score sheet and go, oh, it's not as good as we thought. But I think really they should be proud of how they're doing, because they are fighting against the best, and they're throwing some good punches.
Enjoying some good fun. They're just laughing there because they're on board. It was almost like they were listening to us with their game faces on, wasn't it, James?
Yeah, the hats were on backwards. They're looking calm and cool. We're fired up, ready
We
to
should
go.
be telling them this is not the Bronx, mate. This is the Bay of Palma. But they don't stand in ceremony for anyone. They're enjoying the fact that they're up against the best in the world. As I said a few times yesterday, they won the Copa del Rey, bragging rights on the Bay of Palma at that stage, and learning so much for the future. And I think we're expecting to see them in South Africa next year. Certainly they're very ambitious, and they're starting to get a few more resources. We see with, as you said, Jenny, pointing out they've got some Quantum sails on board, so spending a little bit of money, but a great bunch of guys. Looking at Gladiator just now, Tony Langley, I spoke with him today. He's on to his... This is his 10th World Championship. I remember him turning up in Valencia 10 years ago with the boat called Weapon of Choice, I think it was. And he said, it's getting tougher and tougher every year. And I said to him, Tony, are you still enjoying it as much as you did these years gone by? Being honest, they will struggle to match their career best, if you like. It was a third, I think, in a few years ago in Puerto, third in the World Championship. That's an ambition they can have, but to realise that would be very, very tough for him. But he's another owner-driver who just loves to put himself up against the best in the world, and is totally objective and totally realistic at what. But Jenny, he's really enjoying doing tactics with Andy Beadsworth steering.
Well, I think, again, just as you just said, like Doug DeVos, he just loves racing. So he may have been missing at the last event here. He wasn't in Cascais, but it wasn't racing. He was at home. Him, the home is the UK, and he was competing on his other 52 at Cows Week, and it was super windy there, and it was kind of gnarly, rainy every day, a horrible week in terms of if you're not loving it. And yet he's just like Doug. He gets off the water, there's a smile on his face, you can see he's reinvigorated, and I think the same here. He knows the level here is so good, and I think the steering with a tiller is something that's a little different for him. He likes the wheels, but he's just really enjoying it. So I think it's fun. I do hope that they get to see some better scores than the 6 and 10 that they had yesterday, but I think he's going to have a blast out here no matter what. We just had the postponement flag come down on the race committee about 10 seconds ago, so we're going to be into it here in a minute, you guys, which is great news because it is proper nice sailing conditions, probably almost 12 knots now steady across the course.
So as we said, the course is a little bit further to the left. Would we imagine then it will be a left-hand course? Will we see everybody pitching for the pin end of the line and trying to go left? And I mean, one of the things yesterday we saw, it was a right-hand course, but not everybody could start on the committee boat end of the line.
Yeah, and I'm still not sure if we'll actually see the pen being the fight. I think there's such a question mark after a day like yesterday to really go guns out blazing on the left-hand side. The Bay of Palma often is good on the left, but yesterday it didn't really come through for almost anyone that I can recall. We had one point where someone split left and we thought maybe that'll be good for them, and then they actually dropped through 3 more boats. So I think there's the reality that today's a totally different day, that we had this overhanging gradient last night, the overcast cloud this morning, that the breeze is well up well earlier, and maybe this is more typical Palma. And also the breeze is, as we just spoke about, 30 degrees left of yesterday. So the fact that it's 30 degrees left and the course is further left means we're even more going into this shoreline. Well, we do know where you're starting. I'm excited to see where everyone else is.
Let's wait and see, but let's have a quick look at how the course orientation is relative to the land. We have that point out to the left, which really the breeze wraps round it the closer you are to that point, and that's a more traditional, say, Copa del Rey or Bay of Palma course is a little bit further to the left. You can see the orientation there. We're just almost directly, I think, in front of the airport. And there we are looking upwind. What was the course axis again, Jenny? Did you hear it?
I think it's 180. At least that's the back of the race committee boat says that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going off the pit end and going left. I don't know about you. What about you, James?
I'm going to call a boat start. If I can't be on the first row, I'm going to go for a late charge, bow down, and hit the line with speed.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks.
But yeah, Jenny, I mean, give us a little bit of a kind of insight into the management of the owner-driver, if you like. You know, we see different strategies. The pro drivers can really pick their spot. It's much more about intuitive starting, if you like. The owner-driver, then, it's really about trying to risk manage, trying to not put them in the real hot spots. We saw that a little bit yesterday in the second race with Quantum Racing. They thought they had a space, that space closed. They thought they had another space. Azura closed them down, and then they ended up with a second rank start. So talk to us a little bit about risk management on the start line when there's an obvious way to go up the first beat. Yeah,
I think that's the hard part. If you have a driver on board who's a professional, say an Olympic gold medalist like Shimei, like Brennanasek, he's won the gold medal in 470s in Rio. He then came into the 49ers. He won the world championships. He then came in here and he's won races here on Brennanasek. And they are able, we saw them in the first race yesterday, to kind of be wherever they want to be on the start line. And they have the faith in Shimei being able to do just the little tiny maneuvers that that mean you can start wherever you want. And I think it's really hard to do that on small boats, on dinghies. It's such a finesse between steering, between the main and between the jib. And then you almost could take that and extrapolate that to how much harder that is when you have 12 people on board and you're trying to trim a main and a jib with a driver. And then put onto the fact that the driver might not be an owner driver. So that's what you're talking about, managing the owner driver. And if you're the tactician deciding where to place an owner driver, some of that risk management is you actually just don't place them in a high-risk spot. You wouldn't place them right at the pin, fighting hard for the pin, if you think there's current or you're going to slide down or it's going to be too much of a fight down there. You maybe wouldn't place them right at the boat either, fighting hard for the boat. We saw, like you just said, James, we saw Andy Soriano yesterday, who's sailing with Andy Horton as tactician, give him that sort of late at the boat, tack out immediately spot. And that was, maybe they should have fought for the boat harder, or maybe they knew if we fight for the boat, we're going to be second row. But if we just come in a little bit late, we will have that right-hand side because we'll talk out right after the start. And I think actually, speaking of Allegre right now, they've slid down the line a bit. They're about four boats down, but it is just a difficult fine balance and fine line between what's going to get you the best start and how you know you're going to put yourself in a position where you're still fighting and you're not just getting a horrible race from a bad start.
So we're just about a minute to go. In fact, just as I say, the 1 minute gun goes. Looking like Quantum pitching for the left side, perhaps. So the two Phoenix boats side by side once again.
No, we've got some separation. We've got two boats in between the two Phoenix boats. Quantum Pedmost at the moment Azura and Platoon all over there, all fighting. So yeah, as we said, we know a lot of guys have raced here on Palma Bay. In fact, those 3 teams have raced here a lot in these boats. So they are definitely thinking in this breeze strength, in this left-hand side, and with the shoreline that close, they're all fighting for the pin. And yeah, it looks like Quantum Racing is doing a good job right now. 20 seconds. They might be a touch early, so they're, yeah, here we go with the double tack actually. So they're fighting back up towards the line to try to then leave Al Bernenesek. Azura following them, 13 seconds to go. They're going to both have a little bit of a problem here. They need to tack back and get up to speed, and Bernenesek's going bow down. So is GBR. Meanwhile, up here at the boat in Team Vision Future, rocketing through to what would be a really nice start at the boat, just above Sled, and we have an individual recall. So it is Team Vision Future. I did say they were rocketing into the start there, and I think they rocketed just a second too early. So that's a really tough and kind of unforced error. They didn't have anyone forcing them here, but as we said, it's a little bit harder for a team that's new and without a professional driver on board. I think they're going to struggle to come back from that. But meanwhile, the rest of the fleet all headed out to the left on starboard, and I don't think we'll see the early tacks that we saw yesterday. I think the only time we'll see teams flushing out to the right is if they've actually been flushed because of their situation or their positioning.
Yeah, so the pin looked reasonably strong, although both boats down on that side, Azura and Quantum Racing, not really coming off with max speed at max height, if you like. Just perhaps both sailing for a little bit more speed off the line.
I think we could almost say that while the pin side of the course was favored, that the boat side of the line was a bit further upwind. So it really looks like right now, to my eye, it looks like Sled looks good. Yeah, exactly. If you know they're fighting for the left, you give the right a hope and a fighting chance to get over there. And really, it does look like Sled's doing quite well. They won the last race yesterday, so they're probably a little bit fired up this morning to come out here and go for it. And they've got distance below them to Phoenix 12, so to Tina's boat, and they've got pace at the moment. It looks like they're just going bow forward all the time.
Both the Phoenix boats seem to be just a little bit back on the lead boats just now. Phoenix 12 better than Phoenix 11. Phoenix 12 with Gladiator just below them. Don't think really Gladiator hurting Phoenix too much for the moment.
No, it doesn't look like it, Andy. In fact, from here it looks almost like Phoenix is maybe ever so slowly going bow forward over Gladiator. There is a third boat in that mix that I can't see just underneath Gladiator, and I think that third boat is affecting the Gladiator team, and they're kind of piggy in the middle with Phoenix to windward, almost maybe soon to be able to roll over them.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether Bernenesek are looking pretty good, and meantime Quantum just dropping off the pace very slightly down in that left side. I think they're maybe getting a little bit of dirty air perhaps. I don't know whether you can see that from your position on the right, but yeah, Quantum struggling just very slightly.
I think Azura, in the end, they both did the double tack up to the line. Quantum Racing, a bit too early. And then when they double tack trying to leave out Bernenesek, Azura went with them. And that allows Azura to dictate the tack back, the acceleration, everything. And that's what we were talking about beforehand. That was quite a high-risk maneuver, a difficult one to force anyone to do, much less Doug. And for them, Azura is able to execute it, and it just put Quantum in a really hard spot, just all from the start line.
I don't think they were listening to our commentary, Denny. But yeah, Sled looking good, Allegri looking good, similar in some respects to that start yesterday. But I'm fairly convinced the left will come in, but I'd be happy to be corrected in the next while. Certainly Azura looking a little bit bowed down over there. Meantime, Phoenix 11 tacking across. Quantum have already tacked. No, I think we'll see Azura going out to that left side. I mean, they know the Bay of Palma as well as anybody. Call it Parada, calling strategy. He goes way back. Obviously, he's Guillermo's brother, but they go way back. Racing here. On board with Team Vision Future. Let's have a quick look at the replay for the start. Let's see how it played out. Nice clean start for Sled at the boat end of the line. Team Vision Future, unfortunately, just jumping the gun very, very slightly. I would say that was fairly close, James.
Yeah, Andy, it was looking very close, and I feel like I may have jinxed it there because I did call a boat end start, but they were up to speed and they were absolutely smoking, and a little bit unfortunate to just be a little too early on that start.
But meantime, yeah, good start for Sled, then ending up as the rightmost group boat in the group, also Allegri, and then we're back live on virtual with Phoenix 11, Phoenix 12 and Quantum just splitting away. I think all three of them having to split away from dirty air. On this side we have Phoenix 12 in the foreground of our shot. Sled leading on virtual just now from Allegri, so a little bit of a facsimile of yesterday's second race. Phoenix 11 mid-fleet, 19-20 metres behind the what we have as the race leaders just now. And Quantum Racing then, Jenny, a little bit deep for the moment.
Yeah, I think unfortunately they were the first to get flushed, as we said. Azura was giving them bad air and they dropped out, had to tack back. And then the second problem is they were getting flushed just as the two Phoenix boats were getting flushed. So Phoenix was tacking out because Brennensek and Gladiator were starting to affect them, and Quantum Racing has then kind of had to sit in the bad air of Hasso-Plattner Phoenix 11 on their way across, and they're just tacking back now, thinking this is a nice lane. And these three boats here, the two Phoenixes and Quantum, I think will be kind of second row, second pack compared to all the boats who are still out headed left to the left-hand side of the course.
So a couple of questions, I think, as ever, if you've got any questions about anything to do with the 52 Super Series or indeed the Rolex TP52 World Championship, do pass them in on our social media channels and we'll try and find the right expert to answer them. So there we go, Platoon taking over the lead according to virtual, the left just a little bit stronger. They started pretty well, Jenny, didn't they, Platoon?
You know, it's interesting. They're a team we could have discussed earlier when we were talking about keeping the maneuvers down and the risks down on their start line. Not that Hasso-Plattner needs to be thought of as an owner driver necessarily on the start line. He's a fabulous sailor. He's won tons of other events aside from 52 Super Series as well as 52 Super Series. But as a team, they're very much looking into making sure that they have good starts and they keep their fouls down. That's what Morgan Reeser, their coach, said yesterday. We're just trying to minimize mistakes, and Harm always says that. We're just trying to eliminate mistakes, and that's coming from a team who knows how to eliminate mistakes and has won regattas in the past. They've had a pretty tough year here so far this year because they haven't been able to, and yesterday they weren't quite executing at their best form, and today to finally see them get off the line in a good spot, just to lure it of Sled, able to hold that, and I guess as you're saying, be winning at the moment, then this will be feeling better for them on board.
Just looking at Phoenix 11 then ducking behind Phoenix 12, very, very close. Phoenix 12 strengthening their position, crossing Quantum Racing and Gladiator from this right side. But to me, looking from the aerial shot across to the left, I do think the left is coming in a little bit stronger. We're seeing advantage to Platoon and Azura. And the key thing for Azura, who really need to be putting a few points on Quantum, is they've got 2 or 3 boats between them and the Quantum Racing. Sled now pretty much in the middle of the course relative to the left and right.
And a huge late duck there on Brennensek as well, ducking Phoenix 12. So I think that was a little bit of an unforced error. They'd rather have done the duck earlier and then be coming up on their stern instead of deciding really last second to duck. But perhaps it was just too hard for Brennensek to tack back there. I think the left side is looking good at the moment. You're right. Everyone coming across left, I think, is crossing everyone on the right. But now it's kind of the fight for where's the final spot to set yourself up on the deadline. And it's a really tight fight over here with Phoenix 11 and Gladiator and Quantum Racing. They're actually forcing Gladiator out to attack now. They couldn't survive on Quantum's hip there.
But big picture, great conditions, Jenny. I think you have 12, 13 knots maybe coming in as forecast. Yeah.
is stunning. It is really nice. I mean, it cools you off as well. I think you guys are probably still sweating in there in the studio, but out here, this is just gorgeous, gorgeous conditions. And it's the same as yesterday. The swell is picking up. The second the breeze picks up, the swell in here, because it's quite a shallow bay in general. So the swell can get up huge, and it's probably already 2 feet. But yeah, it's nice. It's giving the boats the ability to rumble, and let's hope it just keeps building through the afternoon.
But we have Platoon leading on virtual just now, between Azura and Platoon anyway. Quantum Racing in 9th place, 8th place. The fleet is so compact in the middle of the course, really, or these middle positions, shall we say, that really the advantage line changing all the time, and some fantastic images coming off the water. Bow number 1, the defending world champion Quantum Racing up against bow 11, which is Hasso Plattner. You were talking about Hasso. Hasso, of course, sailed 505s for very many years. I think really only stopping a few years ago. That gives you that intuitive feel for these high performance modes.
Phoenix 12, speaking of the Phoenixes, is going for a penalty turn here. So
that, yeah.
Unclear as to what happened there, but
maybe we can see that in the replay in a few minutes on the virtual. But yeah.
Race committee, could you please ask the boats on the starboard side of the race to move away? They are affecting the course.
Looking there at Azura out on that left side. Phoenix 12 then settling back down after their penalty. That will have cost them a little bit on the water, dropping to 9th. Sled hanging in there though, considering, you know, we feel this is a left-hand track. Coming off the right side of the start line, coming off the committee boat. So I think we have a little bit of a replay for the incident with Phoenix. So Phoenix coming across on port, James.
Yeah, Andy, it was a simple port start, but I think Phoenix were just trying to shoot the gap a little bit more, and we saw just the last part of it as Braninisek managed to get them the penalty, so having to exonerate themselves and unfortunately putting themselves back down the standings a little bit.
Yeah, looked pretty close, but and Braninisek moving around just a little bit, so maybe we'll catch up with the umpires after racing, get their interpretation of that. We're going to start trying to do that a bit. We have the same umpires all the way through the season. It gives you the consistency of umpiring. It gives you a relationship between the umpires and the sailors. The sailors learn what to expect. Certainly no quarter given, but the rules imposed universally, as they should be there. Just looking at Victor Marinho, a runner trimmer on board the Platoon. Superb athlete is Victor for his age. We see him out running and paddleboarding and all kinds of things every day. There we have a look at the Platoon team. Jules Salter coming in on board this year as a navigator, Jenny, on the Platoon. Otherwise a pretty settled crew, isn't it, on the Platoon?
Exactly, yeah. I think Jules was with Gladiator for a while last year, sailing on board with Tony Langley. So a number of these sailors switch around between the boats. I think Quantum Racing's taken Andy Escort on board this year for their runners. He was previously on one of the Phoenix teams last year. They've done the same with Sled, have taken guys from other boats and they've replaced them with another boat. So I think reality is you're happy with the team that you enjoy sailing with and you like sailing on these boats. And for Jules, it was probably good practice last year to be out racing here with Gladiator. And for him, it's probably really nice to slot into a team like Platoon, where the guys on board, where the brain trust John Kostecki's been sailing with Harm a lot, but also he's been sailing with Dirk de Ridder and Ross Halcrow, I mean, almost more than 10 years, 15 years of their lives as a trimming and tactician team. So as a navigator to step into that, again, I mean, there's just levels of communication being kept down, and the more comfortable you are as a team, the more everything just clicks and you almost don't even have to talk about something. You know what each other's thinking, what they're saying. And for anyone to step into that, much less a navigator who has to actually slot in really nicely with that team, it'd be a fun space to go, I think.
And for I said before when Jules joined the team, I think Jules won the Med Cup with Team New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken, at one point. But hugely experienced navigator, winner of the Volvo race before. And super quiet, super relaxed. Keeps calm under pressure and fitting in nicely to the platoon team. But Sled still hanging in there with the upper hand as we start to approach the top mark. Leading certainly Platoon and Azzurra in on this towards the port ley line. How do you read it, Jenny, with these three boats pretty much side by side coming into the top mark? Who's got the real advantage in terms of position?
I mean, I think it's hardest for Sled. They will hit the starboard ley line first, and they'll have to figure out where it is. And the closer they can go, the tighter it is. They can then make it really, really difficult for Platoon, Azzurra, and Allegre to windward of them to tack inside of them and leave out them. And if they understand by too much, then they'll have to double tack later. And that's just a tricky one for Adam Bichel on tactics and Murray Jones on strategy, and their navigator as well. It's a hard spot to be in, and yet it's a good spot as well, because you really can dictate the fleet. And if you dictate it perfectly, you're winning your right around the course. Perfectly, you're getting the hole and the opening for Azzurra and Platoon to leave out you and for them to get their way around. So I think reality, I'd prefer to be Sled right now, because I do think they have that tiny bit of a bow forward move, and I think if they pull it off here, then they should be leading. But otherwise, for Platoon, then you get to make that choice. You get to go, are we going to leave bow them, or are we going to duck and take their stern and tack and concede second place? And we're about to see that situation happen here. I think they're just rounding the, oh, you know what, Platoon's a bit further inside than I thought that they were. So here goes Sled with the tack, and here goes Platoon with the bearway. Exactly. So Sled's got the top mark and has got the lead again. So a second race in a row, if you'll consider yesterday's afternoon's race, and that's a great place to be for these guys. Platoon just did concede taking their stern. I think they didn't actually have the ability to leave bow. Sled was that tiny bit far enough in front that they were winning regardless. And Azzurra coming in third. So Sled with a bearway, very different conditions than yesterday afternoon. And this breeze has built, and I think will continue to build. Whereas yesterday it was about, this was the maximum, and it was dying through the race. And then Platoon into second, Azzurra in third. Brninicek has just gone for a tight lee bow here underneath Allegre. Talk about being confident in your boat handling and your ability to steer. They are Allegre around the mark, but no harm foul there. But that is almost a mirror image of yesterday with those exact same two boats, and yesterday went much.
Say lightning doesn't strike twice, but certainly Sime Fantella prepared to push things coming into that top mark, getting around just inside Allegre. Allegre, no doubt, sighing a sigh of release as they come away from the mark. Pretty close stuff. And Quantum Racing coming around next, Jenny. Or Gladiator. I think, yeah, Gladiator coming around in fifth. Quantum Racing next. Quantum Racing then are 4 boats behind the Azzurra. But fantastic conditions. We can see the wakes, white wakes coming away from the offset mark. Much, much quicker downwind and a pretty standard bearaway set. Unfortunately, though, Phoenix 11 and Phoenix 12 quite deep. Gladiator, I think, probably in 8th place. 7th place, indeed. Quantum Racing 8th. Phoenix 11 9th, and Phoenix 12 10th. So, not sure how much the Phoenix, well, obviously Phoenix 12 having to take that penalty, and Phoenix 11, I think, just getting a little bit tied up in the traffic. But here we are going down this first race, race number 3 at the Rolex TP52 World Championship. Quantum Racing fully arced up. I think we probably have 13, 14 knots of breeze going down this first run. Quantum chasing Tony Langley. Andy Beadsworth on the helm of the Gladiator, enjoying this little bit more spirited run than yesterday. Gladiator chasing Allegre. But Platoon 100 metres ahead, sorry, Sled 100 metres ahead, and Azura and Platoon fighting each other on board with Brunensek up to fourth. Remember that close mark rounding at the top in between with Allegri, and Brunensek now making that small advantage count. Chime Fontella sitting down now, indicative of how the conditions are a little bit stronger. Great images from our drone as we go downwind, first run out to that left side, one of our umpire boats. Keeping an eye on the fleet, but out front as his Sled are fully launched on board with the Platoon there. See that little square in the right of our picture? That is the blank for the third grinder, third pedestal, which is I think we'll probably only see once this season. May see it again in if it's going to be a breezy week in Porto Cervo, but too much weight for this light to moderate sea breezes here in Palma. So Sled 90 odd metres ahead. Platoon second, Azura third, Allegri in fourth. So Jenny, Sled doing a fantastic job, fully launched, and a little bit of daylight between them and Platoon.
Yeah, I think they're fired up on board Sled. I mean, it's a great day to have won the last race yesterday and start off by winning today. And the reality is they have a couple changes on their boat. We talked about this earlier with Mary Jones stepping in for Ray Davies as the strategist. Simon Dobney on board this year as well as their trimmer. I think I spoke to him over a coffee this morning. He's really excited to be here. He said he's been living just around the corner for about the past 9 months. I kind of thought that meant maybe the island of Palma, maybe somewhere in Spain. When I said, oh, really, where have you been living? He was like, no, 10 minutes down the road. So for him to be then getting on a 52 and playing with this team, and I think actually after a short break in New Zealand to see his kids, he's even more happy to be fired up out here in the sunshine and to be winning and putting some scores on the board for them. And we talked about how Sled was a player in the past, about 2 seasons ago, but they haven't really performed as well as they would like this year. They're sitting 8th overall on the series scoreboard, and they've not had their best regattas so far. So I think putting a couple feet forward or a couple boat lengths forward is probably a good step for them, and getting anything better than an 8th and a 5th, which is their first 2 regattas this year, would be really great for this team. I think in reality we've seen them, the regattas that they do well, we've seen them often win from a side. So I remember when it was very, very Penn favored, they really liked the left, they won a regatta on that. Here we've seen them now 2 races in a row win the boat and then win at least the race to the top mark from there, even if they don't take this win. And so I think that is kind of one of the easier strategies when, just as we were talking about earlier, with an owner driver at the start lines, you can sort of give yourself a bit more distance, a bit more wiggle room by starting at an end, and then you can dictate your own racing a bit more rather than getting ping-ponged up the middle. And in a regatta like this, we've definitely seen being ping-ponged up the middle isn't that helpful, and it's not quite shifty enough or light enough here to be able to execute and win from there. I think that's something that Platoon has been able to do in the past when the regattas are really tricky, shifty, and light. I'm thinking Croatia last year, but here where it's sort of a more steady, consistent breeze, and you just have to get out to one side or the other. And maybe on this one it was get out to the left, but from the favored right-hand side of the start line. I think they've done a good job executing, and let's hope that they keep doing it.
Let's hope so, but Platoon very much taking the battle to a Sled. And I think, as you mentioned, Sled super fired up, having missed Cascais, and really firing on all cylinders, inspired by that win yesterday. Azura doing pretty well as well in third. They have 3 or 4 boats between them and Quantum Racing, and this is what they need to be doing in terms of the big picture, in terms of the 52 Super Series circuit standings. They need to repair the damage that was done yesterday. combination of good racing for Quantum and one or two off-colour moments, shall we say, from the Azura team. Didn't really perform at their best yesterday. 2 and a 9 really in this fleet is too expensive. And unfortunately, in that first race, 2 is very, very good, but first place went to Quantum Racing, if you remember. So Brunnesek, I think just ahead of Azura according to Virtual, but very, very close between the two. Should just get a little bit of a shot of Simon Dobney here talking about on board with them, one of the most experienced trimmers in the fleet. And yeah, I think they're probably just ahead of Azura looking at our image just now. Brunnesek coming down a little bit further to the right of this run. And we're on board, Jenny, with, or we're looking directly at Sled, setting up for the drop. Talk us through the leeward gate, Jenny.
Well, I think that was a good decision. They've got now almost a 10 boat length lead, so they've gone for quite an early drop, but also it's windier than yesterday, so what looks early might even just be about on time. They're going left mark, left turn. They did like the left side of the course last time. We agree with them. It's going to be probably the right side here, and the marks are looking pretty even. Yesterday we had a bit more of a bias towards the right-hand side mark on the bottom gate. So today I think they've done a good job setting them up relatively even, and I think for Sled they had the pick of the litter there with the 10 boat lengths behind them and with the fleet relatively spread out, and they've done a really nice job here to just protect against that left-hand side. Hopefully they'll consolidate, and the platoon does look like actually platoon will be driving and heading directly for that left-hand side as well. So then that makes it even easier for the guys on board Sled to have their decision making about how to protect against the fleet. And I think, as you were saying, platoon looks like they have pulled away from Azura maybe a little bit here. Platoon's already about to round the bottom mark, right turn out to the left-hand side, and Azura is only just completing their drive. So Azura more in contention with Brunnesek at the moment, and I think even Brunnesek has gotten ahead of them here. Brunnesek, as platoon rounds into second on the far side, Brunnesek jibing in behind them on the far side, which means Azura is going to have to come up here on a left mark, left turn to the right-hand side, and that means they've conceded from third into fourth position, yeah, and perhaps heading to the unfavored side of the course here. So difficult. We were too far away to see what actually happened to them on the downwind, but
no, I think Brunnesek just got a little bit further right, a little bit more pressure, and a better rounding, and a really slightly untidy rounding from Azura, from what we could see in our images. Just the kite was in their face coming down. Took a few seconds to get down the hatch, so probably not costing them very much in terms of distance relative to Brunnesek, for example, but just unsettling when you really want to be super focused going up this second beat. But Brunnesek very definitely third and in the preferred side, chasing platoon upwind. Azura go round in fourth.
And then after that, it was Allegre in fifth, also rounding to go to the left-hand side. Just now, Gladiator rounding the left-hand mark into the sixth position. Gladiator doing a nice job there, stretching their legs from the rest of the pack behind them. So Gladiator's probably got another 10, 12 boat lengths back. Very tight battle between Quantum Racing and the two Phoenixes. So I think Phoenix 12 has made some good moves here, actually. I think perhaps they'll be able to be fighting Quantum here for rounding into eighth position. Maybe they're even, no, this jibe hasn't gone as well as they would have liked. So a little bit slow to fill the kite, a little bit too low for too long there. They are still just fighting Quantum for it, but Phoenix will be jibing left, rounding the right-hand side course mark and giving Quantum the left-hand side. And just behind Phoenix 12, Tina, is Hasso's Phoenix, bow number 11. So as Quantum Racing goes around to the left-hand side, the two Phoenixes coming out here to the right. And Team Vision Future actually gained a little bit on that pack of three in front of them and are just now simultaneously rounding with the second Phoenix. So that's the back of the pack and the spread as we look upwind. Mostly everyone on starboard tack headed to that left-hand side again. Phoenix 12 going right in for their attack. Phoenix 11 actually tacking underneath them to leeward, trying to get even earlier to the left-hand side. And I think it's going to be a hard race course today for these 4 boats in the back to make any gains. I think we're seeing what's kind of now a left-handed course, yeah, both up and down, and that means the moving lanes that we saw yesterday, the highway was open, there were some moving lanes around. I think today those moving lanes are a little bit more closed, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult for the guys in the back of the pack to get through.
Yeah, I think fewer opportunities to pass. But equally, the flip side of that is if you can get ahead in the top 3, top 4, as indeed Sled, Platoon and Azura have done, then it's a little bit easier to consolidate. Sled, a big lead then, 170 metres or so, in the battle between Platoon and Azura. But great conditions. Looking at Team Vision Future then, having a little tussle with the Phoenix 11. Certainly, as we said, that penalty crossing with Brennanasek on that first beat, costing Phoenix 11 just a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see how the duel between Brennanasek and Azura plays out. Azura, as you said, Jenny, forced to go to the right mark, looking upwind. Don't seem to be doing too badly relative to Brennanasek, but it really will be on the other tack that we'll see the advantage strengthen, I think, to Brennanasek. But let's wait and see. The breeze looks fairly settled. Do you think we're at max pressure for the day yet, Jenny?
Well, I hope not. I mean, I think the last hour that we've seen the build so quickly between what was 0. I mean, literally teams with their tech stuff at about 12:20, and to be talking about racing at 1 o'clock in 6 to 8 knots, and now to have really nice 10 to 12, maybe even 14. I think we could see, if it's 2 p.m., I think we could see a tiny bit more build, say the next 30 minutes, the next 40 minutes, and then probably the peak at 3. And that's my hope. I mean, today's the day to get out and stretch and run with the boats. And I think we can see that a little bit as well in the fleet, that the positions are getting larger lead lines than yesterday. The pack's a little bit less congested, and yeah, it makes for harder passing lanes, but it kind of makes it a tiny bit more comfortable for the boats out front to be able to defend against the guys behind, and also to be able to make decisions, just because they have that tiny bit more area to play with, and more stretch to go forward with. And I think, again, a one-sided racetrack in a way also contributes to that, because there really isn't the ability for everyone to think that they can make gains anywhere else. The boats aren't able to really do much more than just the follow the leader, even on the downwind. Yesterday we saw a lot more jibe sets, and we saw a lot more position changes on the downwind, although we did see one here with Brennanasek and Azura. So I think that was the hard lesson that Azura learned, was jibing away from that left-hand side, and the downwind was not a good choice.
Indeed, but kind of mid-fleet just now, Gladiator and Allegre doing pretty well. Gladiator 6 and a 10 yesterday. Tony Langley was saying they're just missing a little click here and there, but they're going pretty well, Jenny, aren't they, Gladiator?
Yeah, I think, again, they didn't have the best start. They were sort of fighting. I said they were piggy in the middle at some point, between whoever was to leeward of them, which was maybe Brennanasek in the end, and Phoenix above them. And so after that, we then saw them. No, right. So we'll have to get Westy on it. What happened there? They were very close to Brennanasek that whole upwind. So perhaps a windward-leeward situation, but from the far side of the course, difficult to tell what would have just happened there.
Yeah, I don't think they'll have lost the position relative to Allegre, but well, yeah, they have indeed. But yeah, let's have a quick look at the replay. What happened with Azura and Brennanasek?
Yeah, Andy, it was a very close one. Another port starboard, and Azura there just
too close,
right on her nose, and I think it was just a little too close. Brennanasek appealing to the umpires and managing to ping Azura with the 360.
But I mean, our second penalty in this race. I mean, is that indicative of how close this fleet is, how hard you have to push, Jenny?
I think a little bit as well. It might be indicative of some of the, I'm almost going to say cockiness, although I would not at all say that Guillermo Prada is cocky. But sometimes when you're a professional driver, you just think, I can take that extra inch. I can take that extra foot. I really can push this Liebau in a way that maybe Tina Plattner wouldn't have pushed. And then the reality is sometimes that extra inch is that 1 inch too much.
Yeah, the same thing applies, I would say, then, you know, in the nicest possible way with Brunello, where you have Chimi Fontella, who's used to, you know, the passes and crosses on a 49er doing twice these speeds. Then he feels like he can push just a little bit more. And I think that's what's cost them from time to time, you know. But it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think sometimes the decisions still are split second, even if it was a slower build up to it, perhaps, than say the 49er when they're ripping along. It still actually is. He has to make the choice on where to do the Liebau, or yesterday on where to do the double tack, or where's the right spot for the ley line for the windward mark. And it's still about executing those decisions and the maneuver after the decision. And sometimes, especially with Chimay, if he doesn't have that much time in this boat, then the execution isn't quite as perfect and isn't quite as flawless as maybe he would think it is. And for Guillermo, even if you've got tons of years and tons of time helming on this boat, it proves that you can't actually do it 100% perfect every time.
Indeed. So said 2 penalties in this race so far. Platoon, though, as you said, keeping themselves out of trouble. Morgan Reeser saying that that was one of their fundamental strategies. One of their main strategies this second half of the season, though, was avoid the unforced errors, avoid the penalties, avoid the OCSs, and really just let the boat do its work and the team do its work. We're on board with Team Vision Future. Nice images showing how great the conditions are. Owner there at the back is Dr. Jean-Jacques Chopard, who runs a number of eye clinics in the south of France. A long-time race boat owner. I think their second TP52, and this is the former Sled, the last Sled prior to the one they have just now. And they started out in a GP42 near miss. That's where they started their kind of Grand Prix racing career. So that, looking at the leaderboard, that penalty for Azura costing them 100 metres or so, 150 metres on Brunello. Maybe just a little bit less, but certainly gives Brunello a little bit more breathing space in third place. But Sled, big lead now, over 240 metres. As ever, Jenny, you get your nose in front in these conditions, you can sail your own race. You don't really have to be looking back too often, do you?
No, exactly. If you can pick where you want to go, and pick, these guys did. Start at the boat, head to the left, tack when they wanted, call the ley line when they'd like. They've executed almost flawlessly here, and I think they're going to be happy to hear that. But yeah, they really have. They've just stretched out, and they've got the wind at the moment to prove it. I think the other thing we haven't really spoken about, just speaking about how Team Vision Future is the old Sled. The majority of these boats are relatively new, our last year's models, but the boat that was going into today's racing in the lead
is a 2015
it's very
boat.
Much so not. Yeah, exactly. And so it's great to see that it doesn't really mean you have to have the newest model and the latest model to be at the top. I think to see Tina, to see them have such a great day, 2/3 yesterday, and winning the field after last night, it does show that these boats, while there are those minor variations, and you know this better than me, Andy, but from the Rolex to the Botine, from the two designers kind of coming closer to each other.
That's right.
And trying to get their weaknesses of, say, if Botines are better in light and Rolex better in breeze, coming kind of more center line with that. But still to see the old boats perform on just as tough a day, it's great.
And absolutely, I mean, and looking forward, what we have this situation then with going to going to South Africa in the early part of next year. These regattas will be early March and early April. It really does put a kind of blocker, if you like, on building a new boat for next season. And so therefore we do have some stability looking forward. If anybody's thinking of coming into the fleet, then there are still a number of competitive boats on the market. If you're thinking about coming into the fleet, certainly the old Luna Rossa would be top of your shopping list just now. Hopefully, or I presume it's still for sale. It was a couple of weeks ago. But that would be one boat that you could pretty much turn the key and be competitive. But yeah, I mean, it's remember that in Cascais, every boat in the fleet won at least one race, and I think all of the regattas so far have been won by just a single point. And I wouldn't bet against this World Championship being won by a single point. And I'm going to start tipping Sled, I think.
All right, okay, fair
Didn't
enough.
I say that yesterday? Didn't I? I'm sure I did.
Well, I don't know. Your number one contender is ashore still until possibly this afternoon if they're able to come out. So I think I give up on tipping my hat for yeah, exactly, for who we think is going to do well. But meanwhile, Sled is coming into this top mark, about to tack, giving themselves plenty of room here. This time they're not being forced by anyone around them, and it is still building at the moment, Andy. I mean, it's just looking really stunning now. The waves I said earlier were probably 2 feet. They're now probably 3 to 3.5, and it's something like, I want to say 14, 15 in the puffs. So gives a full ride downwind, and Sled will be ready for the full ride. That's kind of what their name implies, isn't it?
That's right. Sleigh ride downwind. I mean, obviously not Cascais-like conditions, but pretty quick, pretty fun downwind anyway. And also nice that we're well up to schedule. It's just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon here on the Bay of Palma. Should be able to roll straight into the second race. Around the coming up to the windward mark, second time up, Jenny. Sled. We're just on about 40 minutes of racing.
And then following Sled here, Platoon tacking into the top marks. A proper good lead now for Sled, but almost half that lead for Platoon now too.
Just watching the legendary Mickey Muller, the grinding there on Platoon, coming round the top mark in second. They're well clear of Brunanasek. I think we could possibly safely, perhaps, maybe safely say that the podium for this race is settled, but who knows? Always good to tempt fate, but wind shift signal, or a change of course signal there at the windward mark.
Change of course being marked for 350 on the downwind. I'm not actually sure what the previous downwind would have been set for, maybe 360 actually if it was a 180 upwind. Yeah. So just a small shift. And I think fair, that's to the finish line at the moment. So the guys...
Just looking at Brunanasek coming round in third. Sled, Platoon, Brunanasek. Wonder if we might in a few minutes pull up the projected leaderboard. We might get that from our friends at Virtual Eye in the next few minutes. But meantime, we are watching Vladimir Lubomirov's Brunanasek coming round the windward mark, second time up in third place in a battle between Allegri and Azura. Azura just ahead, inside position coming round the top mark. Just in our shot there, race committee boat, race committee rib, signalling the change of course, as Jenny said, leeward gate now at 350. Azura head to head with Allegri, but some big gaps opening out now, Jenny.
Yeah, pretty big. I mean, the bummer for Azura is the gap behind them to Allegri is tiny now. So that penalty, as you said earlier, didn't really give him a place.
Alegre then, we just had a quick shot of Matteo Agorde on the bow of Alegre, working hard. Then we see Phoenix 12 leading Quantum Racing round the top mark. And then Phoenix 11 just behind them, but Quantum Racing 1-7 yesterday, and I think probably 8th just now. Really, it was all about the coming off the start line for them, I think. And unable, not, as Jenny said, not too many passing places on this course. A little bit one-sided, as we quite often see on the Bay of Palma, and so that's really not helping Quantum Racing. However, they have 3 boats between them and Azura, so Azura say repairing a little bit of the damage done yesterday to their circuit lead. High activity on board the Quantum as this kite is set. Trimmer we just saw there setting the kite was Federico Michetti, who's new to the team this year. Many times a world champion in the Melges class, which he's still involved with, I think. So heading down this second run, Sled with a big lead, over 300 metres. Up on platoon. Renasek third.
Oh no, Quantum Racing has a, there we go, has a twist in their kite. So it was Team Vision Future, apologies guys. Their sails look a lot like Quantum Racing's in the back. Yeah, they're twins. And even their spinnaker says Amway on it. It's sponsorship ad for the Quantum Racing spinnaker, which also says Amway, Doug DeVos's company. But yeah, just a tiny twist which came out quite quickly, but isn't helping them get any closer to Phoenix 11 in front of them. So perhaps just a problem in putting it away.
Getting a quick shot then of the Amway kite. So great conditions on this downwind, nice white caps, 13-14 knots of breeze. A little bit of a lull just now for Quantum as they just pick up a wave. The bow starts to lift very slightly. Quantum then in 8th place just now. And Sled jibed for the line, I think, perhaps.
They have, yes, in front. The first 2 boats, in fact, so Sled and Platoon have both jibed for what looks like it should be the ley line. Bernenasek going a bit further along, but it is almost, yeah, not quite a parade, but close to it at this moment. All the boats so spread out. Even the battle that we had, that we thought we might have between Azura and Alegre. Azura seems to have stepped it up a little bit. Almost 3 boat lengths now lead between them and Alegre. So we could perhaps see the 2 of them have a little giant duel at the right time, but other than that, Bernenasek decided it's the right time for them, and for the rest of them, that's kind of the final decision into the finish before getting ready for the next race.
So this would be Sled's second win in a row. Jenny, it's so important that these teams have a kind of time in the sun, if you want, over the course of the season, that they have some really good results, some good days in terms of the kind of future. They can look back at the good days as well as the bad days, and feel like they're competitive and the resources that are put into these teams are worthwhile.
Yeah, 100%. I think that we all know what it feels like to have even a good day or a bad day at work. And, if the work is as a pro sailor, the work is your job on board, it's even harder than to remember that for the owner. It's their playtime, it's their holiday from their jobs. And so for them to have a bad day and for for it to feel sour on board is a horrible thing, because not only, as you're saying, there's the amount of money and time that's going into it, but it's also kind of, this is the free time and this is how they're spending it. And yet, anytime that happens, you go out and you have a good day, and it is just like,
exactly.
I mean, there's unicorns and rainbows. Like, it's just the feeling of coming off the water after a good day. We all know it. It's amazing. And so I think for Sled, I think this is a turnaround. They've had a hard season so far. Mr. Oku is a great helmsman, has been involved in other regattas, has been racing, even when he missed racing here. But still, it must hit him hard when they have a hard race. And yet, to have two really good, to be winning 2 races out of the first 3 in what's now really the tightest fleet that it ever has been, I think it's going to be, just full. And when I say all smiles and unicorns and rainbows, they are quite reserved when they win on board that boat. It is
they're Kiwis.
what we saw yesterday, handshakes. Yeah, exactly. And that's it. There is no celebration. But But yeah, I think the really cool thing will be to see how they go next race, and I'd love to be a fly on board that boat and kind of hear Murray Jones and Adam talking to each other about how to not psych themselves up, but how to take on the next race. You know, that's the intricacies between all these teams.
And so much experience on board. I mean, I did that interview with Andrea Vicentini. It was great fun because we picked Andrea out and all his crew around about him as we're doing the interview, and the banter was just priceless. And poor Andrea's absolutely on the spot. He responded beautifully. I said, Andrea, €100 if you use the word sea breeze, and he got through it. It was really good fun. So there we are, nice shot on board. I say Andrea Vicentini, the navigator, Italian, in the hot seat, doing a fantastic job on the sled. But an international team with a very strong Kiwi flavour. Murray Jones, I think 5 times America's Cup winner. And back on board, Adam Bichel, huge level of experience, sailed with Ran as a strategist at different times. Very much a safe pair of hands, I would say. Very experienced and nice and calm.
I think you could probably say half that boat are
Team
New Zealand America's Cup guys. Yeah, they're all safe pair hands, and some of them are. I mean, Derek Sauer, one of their grinders, his hands are probably the size of actual basketballs. You know, if they're
exactly safe pair.
America's Cup, there's another job.
There's a few of them. They're a safe pair of hands, but a danger on the dance floor. Indeed. So meanwhile, back in the second platoon, Bernanasek coming into them just a little bit perhaps, but I would think that platoon should be able to close out their second. I wonder whether we can just get a projection of the regatta standings from our friends at Virtual Eye. But I think this will be interesting. Probably platoon should get up and take the lead on my very, very poor arithmetic/mathematics. I would guess that platoon will actually know, well, platoon and sled. There we go. As if by magic, sled on 11, platoon on 11, Phoenix 12 on 13, Azura 15, and the key thing is Azura pulling back some points on Quantum Racing on the circuit standings. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the Rolex TP52 World Championship. And these are a very nice moment for the sled team, Jenny, as they take their second win.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to eagle eye. I've got an actual eye over our camera on board here to see if there's any congratulations on board, but there very much is not at the moment, and yet there should be soon. I think they've done a really stellar job here. Yesterday's conditions so very different than today's. As we said, lighter, dying breeze today, building breeze, more of a left-hand race course today, more of a right-hand race course yesterday, and yet sleds managed to pull it off. So if they can pull it off again next race, that would be 3 in a row, would be spectacular. Meanwhile, behind them in second place, bow number 2, and as you said, coming to fight Sled for the tie at the top of the leaderboard, Platoon. So we spoke about them a number of times yesterday about how they haven't quite been performing to their potential. They're sitting 3rd overall, but just 1 point back from Quantum Racing actually on the overall series. So they are still very much in contention, and they're a team that can often put up top 3s, top 2s, top scores on the board. And I think the reality is they're probably not even a dark horse. They are just one of the contenders that we should be keeping an eye on for this week and for the overall series. Any one bad race could drop Azura right back into the mix between themselves and Quantum as well for the overall. So well done to Platoon there to be able to pull that off and get that second place in this race. And then just behind them, Brennennesek, squeezing out what was a hard race yesterday and a hard but became good race in the first one with a third here. So I think a team that we've seen have a lot of potential this year, and we've talked about Chimay a lot, but the whole team coming together to sail well together, and they know how to execute. I think this is just the beginning of their execution, really.
Yeah, I just saw Vladimir steering the boat through the finish line there. So it's not all Chimay.
No, I think it is still maybe Chimay on the starts and the upwinds, and then somewhere in there they do a swap, and Vladimir steers the downwinds, yeah.
But certainly a mix. And then Azura coming through. Just that penalty costing them distance and the ability to challenge Brennennesek. So Azura fourth, probably not too upset with the position, but not good taking a penalty. And then Jen Allegre.
Yeah, Allegre into fifth here. So they didn't start the regatta off that well yesterday with a 10th at the opening gates, but they followed it with a 4th. So to get a 5th place here, I think just going back to some of their fine form, they're often contenders for about 4th or 5th place, and I think we could see them do much better than that because they've got a good team that can execute together, but they're not punching right above their weight, and I think we would hope for them to do. And then Gladiator here just behind them, coming in for what's going to be, I think, 6th position.
Right. 6th again, 6th yesterday in the second race, I think.
In the first race
Sorry,
yesterday,
6th in the first race, yes, you did right.
Yeah, a number of changes on board Gladiator as well. They brought in Kyle Langford, who's been doing all kinds of stuff after the last America's Cup, including the ocean race and some other big boat racing, and he's been sailing with Gladiator just recently in their Cows Week, I think. So good to see him on board, but yeah, would love to see their team hit their full potential. And then, of course, as they cross the line, Phoenix 12 hitting some of their full potential yesterday for Tina, and we saw them at the top of the leaderboard. I think we're now seeing them, is that third, Andy, you just said, in the leaderboard after what was a tough race there. But that was just all about starts and execution, and they didn't quite have the placement on the line, and they kind of got squeezed out and then piggyback to the right. But anyway, let's see if we can get in for the 3 boats behind, because it is a very, very tight battle for Quantum Racing, who's just squeezing out, I think, Phoenix 11, who's also then squeezing out Team Vision Future. But what looked like a tight battle is maybe not quite as harsh as it's going to be as they come into the finish line here. Quantum taking that 8th position. Phoenix really trying to fight it right to the end, but they're not going to. Oh, they are fighting it hard, but they're not going to get them right at the finish line there. 9th, and Team Vision Future really still, I think, very much in the mix. We said it. They are fighting with the big boys, even if they're not last or last across the line. And that, just hearing a green flag from the umpires there, so someone really was trying to push it hard with the red flag there, but all good on the umpires, and that was the finish order.
And that Amway kite on the Quantum sails really starting to make your job just a little bit more difficult with 2 Phoenixes and 2 Quantums, if you like. It's not easy. Anyway, credit to the Team Vision Future guys, really pushing hard. And so let's have a quick look at the race replay, how this played out. Key things, if you like, were the penalty for Azura and the early penalty for Sled, let's go over to James for the replay. Let's see how things played out in race number 3.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Obviously a fantastic race out on the Bay of Palma here, and we could go on board with Platoon just before the start, doing a quick double tack to put themselves just below Brennennesek for the start. And as we come out to the drone shot of the start, I did call the boat end of the line, and unfortunately for our Team Vision Future, just getting pinged too early on the start, and then the word coming over on the comms from the race committee that they were over OCS and having to duck back around to exonerate themselves and get back into the race. Early on, it was Sled, Allegre and Phoenix who took the top 3 standings on this first upwind beat. You can see bow to bow, a good drag race up that first beat. And then as the teams came back together, you can see quite a big crossing moment there between the two Phoenix boats, Quantum as well, and also Gladiator in the mix there. So the Phoenix 12 falling back in the rankings a little bit as they made their way up that beach. Just going to the graphic now to show you as the teams made their way up. Again, Sled just pushing their bows out into the lead, and as they came around the top mark, doing a fantastic job to keep Team Platoon just behind them, and they were hot on their heels. Azura just falling behind Platoon in third, Brennensek in fourth, Allegre in fifth. You can see just a slight pre-deploy here from Team Vision Future, obviously doing everything they can to get that Spinnaker up as soon as possible, powered up and chase down the pack. Going back up with the leaders here, you can see Azura hot on the heels of Team Platoon, and then the leaders, Sled, starting to stretch their lead a bit. Platoon just going on board with them. You can see Sled just in the background and leading the fleet down to this bottom mark. Sled having a very good downwind leg, and they choose to split here, taking that left-hand gate. A little bit slow around the maneuver, but as they made their way up onto the upwind beat, you can see Platoon starting to follow them again, and Brennensek going with a jibe drop and chasing Platoon around in third. Azura just falling back into fourth there. And as we go to the graphic, you can see all of the teams following Sled out to that favored left-hand side, and this is really where Sled started to put the heat on. And we can see this penalty right now. Azura just tacking into Brennensek's water. Brennensek flying the penalty flag, and Azura unfortunately getting pinged and having to do a quick turn to exonerate themselves. Going back up with Sled, this is where Sled started to really put the heat on and get out to quite a handsome lead as they rounded the top mark with a huge lead back to Platoon. Platoon doing everything they could to chase down the leaders, coming around the stretch mark, and as you can see, back to just on the right-hand side of the picture there, Brennensek coming around in third, and quite a big gap between first, second, and third. And as they flopped over onto port, coming into this final downwind, it was all Sled all the way as they took their second race win in a row, followed by Platoon coming through in second place. And Brennensek doing a great job fighting hard throughout that race to take third, and starting to go more into the form that we have seen from Brennensek in the past, Andy.
Yes, but a good win for Sled. 2 wins in a row for Takashi Akura and his team on the American flag boat, and really taking the winning impetus there. Top of the table then, Sled with these 2 wins, 11 points. Platoon also on 11 points. A little bit of a charge for Harm Muller-Speer and his team. Phoenix 12, who were leaders going into today, now on 13. Azura 15, Quantum Racing 16, Brennensek 16, also still very, very close. 19 points apiece for Phoenix and Allegre. Gladiator 22, Team Vision Future 23, and hopefully we might get a little bit of an update through the day from Provezza team how the mast situation is going. But Sled 2 wins and top of the table. I wonder whether they can keep up that momentum into the race number 4 of this Rolex TP52 World Championship. I'm joined in the studio here by Lars Böking, our sustainability manager, one of the many hats that Lars wears. But Lars, food waste is an initiative we talked about the early part of the season. We now have a pragmatic, practical solution here in Palma.
Yes, so we launched something new at the beginning of the season. We were talking about food waste in general. We were talking about composting. We were talking about the right number of food what we're offering through the sailors, to our staff. And now here we launched something new, and that's a cooperation what we have with a foundation which is called Yachting Gives Back. They're from Palma. And the good thing is, yesterday they went here with their small little truck, and they took all the food leftovers, and they brought it back to Palma, and they gave it to people who still, who deserve it. People having hunger, suffering hunger. And I think that's very, very important, just to do that. And for us, it's really more important, to give the food back to the people who need it instead of doing all the composting. Composting is important, but I think that was a very smart solution what we found here in Palma, cooperating with the Yachting Gives Back.
So we had our ambassadors meeting yesterday, and we were talking. I mean, obviously, Costa Smeralda is not somewhere you'd associate with homelessness or whatever. But next year we go to Cape Town, and we're already talking about initiatives there. What can we do there in terms of the food waste?
I think the discussion what we already had with the representatives from Cape Town, that lead exactly in the same direction, because we know that the situation in South Africa is a little bit different to what we are facing here in Europe. So we are trying to find another charity helping out with the fight against food waste as well. But at the end, we are doing more and more things than what we said before. Talking to the people, influencing people, interacting with people, and that's what we are doing. So one of the biggest thing is, what we launched, I think 3 or 4 years ago already, having the meetings with the ambassadors, with the representatives of the different teams, and there's lots of interaction going on. And the teams are coming up at every single event with some new idea, with some new initiatives, and then we are trying to put this into action, and that works quite well.
So one of the things we talked about there that came from our ambassadors was crew clothing, something like that. I mean, we all build up these piles of crew clothing and event clothing at home. What can we do with that?
It's the same, what we are doing here with Yachting Gives Back. We are not only giving back, the food leftovers. We are doing the same, with the team clothing, because you know how it is. Sometimes your sponsor is changing, but the quality of the product is still the same. But then you have to change the whole clothing, and so there are also lots of leftovers, and we are giving them back to the society as well. And I think that's what we can do, not only here at the different events.
The other events can do the same. I mean, when you look at some big championships and stuff like that, the amount of food waste that's generated is not acceptable, is it?
No, it's not. And at the end, and that's also one of our biggest messages is, yes, we are doing it here, and we are trying to influence people, and we are trying to use the media impact. But at the end, everybody can do something at home. And, the food waste is not just a thing, happening at different events. No, most of the houses at home, it's happening as well. And that's a little bit, the message in general. But at the end, it will take a little bit of a while. But we're working also in some other sports events, and for example, we did an analysis at a VIP area at one of the top Champions League club in Europe, and the thing is, they were offering to 1,000 guests something like 1.8 kilo food.
Of food.
Yeah, for one single person. And at the end, yes, maybe we are hungry, but 1.8 kilo of food within 3 hours, I think that's a lot. But the thing is, you have to think about it. And also when it comes to... Yeah.
Multiply it by 1,000 people, you've got 1,000 kilos of food.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is also, when you talk to the organizers, sustainability, you can save money by having a sustainability policy or a strategy. And it's not like that you have to invest money. When we're talking about food waste, we are talking about money as well. You have to order the right amount of money for food, and then you can save money. And I think that's also a little bit some of the topics what we have here on our table at the 52 Super Series. And so for us, it's really important to talk to the caterers and to influence them. It's very much about ordering the right number of food, and then what do you do with the food afterwards. So cooperating with Yachting Gives Back, I think that was a great initiative. And the teams, they were deeply impressed, because yesterday I think we collected just one day, 25 kilos of fresh food. And with 25 kilos of fresh food, that's food for something like 40 or 50 families. Completely. And that's, a really important factor for us as well, and that's motivating. We do sustainability because we believe in that. It's not only that we are doing that to keep our partners, and thank you very much again to 11th Hour to keep them happy, but at the end, it's very much what we have to do, and it's like an obligation for everybody.
So talk to us a little bit about the blue water filter system. That's something we brought in, I think, was it last year? And that's been a big success. But how can we leave that as a legacy for different venues that we go to? I mean, this is a typical venue where a system like that is great for a marina. It's great for a holiday destination.
Yeah, that's true. Also what we can see here in the marina of Puerto, there's a high public interest. There are lots of people stopping there, refueling their bottles with the water, and the quality of the water is pretty high. I think that's on our agenda as well. And what we said before, it's very much about the small little bits and pieces, and it's a great initiative, and we will do the same in South Africa as well. And because in South Africa you have a problem with the water quality as well.
Indeed. What else have we got on our plate in terms of new initiatives coming through from the ambassadors?
One of the things also what we did today here in Puerto, we had this cooperation with the local sailing school of Puerto. But this time it was not like, okay, let's go to the beach and clean up the beach. We said, no, we have to talk with the kids a little bit more in detail about the environmental problems in general. And that's what we did here as well. We talked a little bit, what the problems are. I think one of the key figures still is that in 2050 we will have more plastic in the sea than fishes. That's a little bit like a wake-up call for everybody who loves the sea. But at the end, it's not only about the sea, it's about the nature in general. And sometimes it's really annoying the number of waste you can see wherever you go. I think there was in Puerto Sherry, it was the same, just close to the harbor. So many plastic, and that's what we are saying, that's what we are fighting for, that the people change their mindset. It's very much a question of mindset. And as soon as they think about it, they will do something. But the thing is, we have to spread the message, we have to influence people, and as more people starting thinking about it, as better it will be for the future of the world.
We're definitely seeing some changes, some behavioural changes within the fleet over the last couple of years. Some of the older sailors, shall we say, are now really taking the message on board and being a little bit more responsible.
No, that's true. And at the end, the teams are really open-minded. I think they got the message, and also when we're talking with the different ambassadors, it's very much okay. Take the message to other events as well. Because at the end, it's about influencing. And for example, the team Phoenix, they developed a special water filtration system, what they take on their own rib. And now the interest of other teams is really high in getting this product as well. This special small little machine launched by Phoenix. I think they have it already on their rib, and now Atsura is thinking about this small little machine as well. So, it's very much about best practice, and at the end also talking to the people.
Great, we have these initiatives going forward, and we have a strategy for the future. Thank you very much, Lars. So let's have a look back to Cascais. Cascais was very much a different regatta to this. We had big winds, big waves, and fantastic action that was beamed all around the world. Welcome to Cascais in Portugal. The 52 Super Series stays in the Atlantic for the third regatta of the season. Cascais has this reputation for big winds and big surf. Let's see if it delivers.
The whole week looks great, and I'm just trying to enjoy it.
It's a good challenge because it's different than the other regattas this year. It's good, having fun.
We're going to do our very best, but there's some very good teams here. Too tight.
Cascais does not disappoint. Such a contrast to the light, flicky breezes of Andalusia. Provezza arrive in Cascais on the heels of a big win, while by contrast the circuit champions Quantum Racing come back to Cascais, where they won the world title last year after their worst finish for years. Cascais, with its pretty streets, bars and restaurants, beaches and lively buzz, is very popular with the sailors, and after a big day in the water, coming ashore the smiles are obvious. Platoon, who have already marked themselves out as contenders this season, are missing their talismanic Olympic champion, America's Cup winner Jordi Calafat. Calafat's injured his fingers, and coach Morgan Reeser steps onto the boat.
This is the most challenging place we get to sail and the funnest, so really looking forward to it.
And Platoon are hoping their new secret weapon, a third pedestal winch at the back of the boat, will pay off in the Cascais surf and big winds.
We were thinking in our racing in windy conditions to have a third pedestal in the back of the boat. One of the reasons is First is to keep the weight of the crew in the back of the boat. So if we have a pedestal here, the big grinders of the boat can be on the back of the boat to do maneuvering. And the second reason is in some windy conditions you need more power to hoist sails, drop sails and do maneuvers, so you also can add 6 people to grind.
Day 1 and it's over 20 knots, just what was ordered by the fleet. Adrenaline pumping conditions, it seems like Provezza have carried forward their winning momentum. Azzurra actually lead early on, but they jibe set at the top mark and let Provezza through to win. But race 2, the champions hit their straps, and Quantum Racing following up with an opening second place with a victory. Day 2, and at this time it's Azzurra who win the preferred right side of the upwind and extend away to a victory, but Quantum Racing are second. Platoon proved their mettle in the second race with their victory, but Quantum Racing are super consistent. 3 second places in a first have already sailed their best sequence of the season. And on the third day, Quantum Racing extend the regatta lead halfway in the event, and the champions haven't finished the race below second place, but the day really did belong to Hasso-Plattner. The uber-experienced German owner-driver missed out on his first win the previous day. One jibe from home, they dropped from first to fourth, but today they don't crack under pressure and deliver Hasso's first win on the circuit. Quantum Racing are well ahead on the overall standings though. The breezy conditions and big seas are seemingly relentless and are especially tough on bodies and on minds. None more so than for the bowmen, the rock stars up at the sharp end.
It's been hard, it's been windy and the boat's been bouncing around a lot and downwind, and we stick the bow in and the wave comes back, and it's been a little tough to hang on.
And at Cascais, ocean advocate Emily Penn comes to visit the circuit and gives us all food for thought, with her enthusiasm, her passion and her pragmatic ideas.
It's fantastic to see the Super Series taking such great initiatives on the plastics issue. I haven't seen a single plastic bottle since I've arrived, and I think there's so many more ideas on what more the athletes can be doing, the way that they can actually work on other areas of influence to be able to change this problem as well.
And it looks like business as usual on day 4, starting out in 30 knots as the fleet goes afloat. But there's a delay as the wind suddenly drops away. Only one race is sailed down on the inshore easterly arena. It's shifty, funky and a big contrast to the racing so far. Andy Soriano's Allegre register their first bullet here, but in 4th, Quantum Racing will carry a 5-point lead into the final day. And the middle of the regatta marks the halfway point through the 5 regatta season. At the top of the standings, Azzurra have a little bit of a lead, but 3 teams are all tied and Quantum Racing are back in contention. Well, if the winds were a little bit lighter on the penultimate day, the Saturday showdown sees a full 25 to 30 knots of northwesterly, and Bernasek win the penultimate race. Quantum Racing are third, Azzurra second, and that means Quantum Racing lead into the final race by 4 points. And the regatta goes down to the final run. Azzurra stay offshore and make a big gain at the last minute. Platoon going head to head with Provezza. Platoon come through to win the final race. Azzurra just miss out by a matter of a couple of metres, but Azzurra's second, Quantum Racing in 5th. So Quantum Racing win their first regatta title of the season. Azzurra missing out once again by a single point.
Tough conditions. I mean, it was windy at times today. I think we had some good 30-knot gusts and it was some unreal racing. Wow, this fleet's tight. The whole fleet sail these boats to an unbelievable level. We lost a few more points on Azzurra today, but overall we're pretty pleased. So small victory this week, but there's 2 more events with a big goal at the end of that.
So the final standings, Quantum Racing win on 23 points, Azzurra just a single point behind on 24, and Platoon third on 35 points. A great week in Cascais, winds blowing every day, big surf, and a great win for Quantum Racing, their first of the season. Now we go to Puerto, back to high summer and sea breezes. Join us there. Indeed, great images there from Cascais. Fantastic regatta for the second year in a row on the Atlantic. But we are in the Mediterranean on the Bay of Palma. Conditions very, very good today, but not quite what we have in Cascais. James, give us a little bit of an update on the situation with Provezza. It's good news, but not as good as it could have been.
Yeah, as you saw early on, we did have a chat and they were hoping to potentially make it out for the second race of the day. But the good news is that the mast is in the boat, but I think they just obviously don't want to rush things. They just want to get the mast tuned right so they can come out firing tomorrow for the first race of the day tomorrow.
Indeed, but all credit to the Provezza team. They were straight into action yesterday after this. After the mast came down in the start of the second beat, the first race of the day. And within a few minutes, I think they had their logistic programme underway. The mast arrived here at 7:30 this morning, went into the STP shipyard. And really, they've been flat out ever since. They've got as many people as they need there. And the mast is in, and they should be in good shape for tomorrow. Very fortunate they have a spare mast. But let's have a look at the scoreboard coming into this regatta. It was Azzurra with a little bit of a lead. They had, I think it was 8 points coming in after a pretty solid result in Cascais. Quantum Racing winners there, got themselves back into contention. Platoon in contention as well on 103 points, so there's 8 points between the top three boats. Provezza not far away at 108. That was the situation coming into this regatta. And now let's have a look at the situation today after the first race today, race number 3 of the series. And it's Azzurra still at the top of the table, their lead cut to 4 points, but Platoon now in second overall, and Quantum Racing 115 points, so 7 points of a difference. So Azzurra, I say, did a lot of good in that first race today in terms of their overall standing relative to Quantum, but Platoon, I would say, becoming more and more of a threat, James.
Yeah, that table's starting to look very interesting, and considering we're in the penultimate event of the series, I think, you know, as we get to the midway point of this regatta and then start closing in on the end, it is almost going to be who's going to hold their nerve.
Exactly. I mean, I think that so many times in the past seasons, at this point, there's been a winner, a potential winner emerging. Sometimes it's really been just a case of counting down to the races to the end of the season. But very different this year. It's really going to be all on in Puerto, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's basically a reflection of the quality of the fleet as well. And I think as the teams have got better and better throughout the seasons, we're starting to see a lot tighter racing, and you couldn't ask for more in a fleet like this. 11 boats, but they're split by only a couple of points each way.
I mean, let's remember that really the season, if you want, started way back in March in Valencia, and that started with, I think there was 2 or 3 boats. 2 boats were going to do a little bit of training together, and we joked about it at the time as the fear of missing out regatta, because once there was 2 boats going to train together, then everybody else came into Valencia and they all trained, or some trained for the week before, but that became a training regatta, and then everybody was training before Palma Vela. And so when we came to the first regatta of the season, everybody was at the same level, and really it's kind of gone from there. It makes a very, very long, intense season for the shore crews, but really it's going to be a real cliffhanger, I think, when we look forward to Puerto next month. Let's get an update from the water from Jenny Tullach. How are things looking, Jenny, for race 4 of the series, the second race of the day? We've still got great breezes, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, if we were saying it was beautiful earlier, it's just gotten nicer as the day's gone on. I think the sea state continues to build. I don't think the breeze is building much more, so probably holding at this 13, 14, maybe even 15 knots, but it's beautiful conditions at the moment. I think we're inside about 5 minutes to the gun, even 2 minutes to the gun. Maria's speaking on the radio as I speak to you, so I didn't quite hear what she said. But it's looking really nice, and I think reality is, as a team right now, you might be wanting to repeat Sled's performance. You might think the left side's still going to be favored. We're still close to the shore. We still have the ability to have some top shifts at the left, but if you can win the boat and you can hold the entire fleet below you, then that's the winning move, and it worked for Sled. And I think we'll see who can perform that the best, because that's about execution. If that is actually the strategy, who can execute that the best?
I mean, it's interesting, obviously, Team Vision Future over the start line. and that was ultimately to Sled's advantage. It was only probably a metre in it or something like that. Could have been very different though, couldn't it, if Team Vision Future had come off the line in that windward position with their timing just perfect.
Oh, how great would that have been if they were possibly able to be the bride in that race? I think yeah, the reality was they were so close and a hairbreadth over. But I do think possibly over the length of that starboard tack I don't know. We'll have to see. But they might not have been able to hold there on Sled's hip or even on Sled's windward quarter. And I think it would have been great to see them line up properly like that and to see if they could, because it's a question if it's one wave too many and you hit the wave just wrong, then can you hold? And yet it wasn't quite as wavy in that first upwind, so it might have just been just to their advantage, and that would have been nice. But anyway, it went the way of Sled. They had a beautiful start, and it didn't quite go the way of Team Vision Future, but it doesn't mean that they won't be rebounding and won't be just as fired up for the next race.
So what's your view on the how the season is shaping up then at this point? I think probably maybe we've got 16 races, something like that, left until the end of the season. It's really shaping up very nicely for a nice finale in the Costa Smeralda.
Yeah, exactly. I think the vision of having 10 more races there and sort of maybe possibly 4 to 6 more races here. There's still a lot of racing in it. We've seen a lot of the regattas this year won by 1 point, so we've got the awareness the fleet can be really close, and yet sometimes the final regatta, it is about the series as well as that regatta itself, and so the scores might then tend to be a little bit different there depending on how people are actually trying and caring about what it is that they're performing. So I think for Quantum and for Azura, it absolutely will be about the season at that point, and sometimes you sacrifice the regatta win if you have to get the overall season, and yet we're kind of still so far away from that. There's still so many points on the table that just one bad race, like Quantum just had one bad race for Azura could put everyone right back in the mix, and Platoon is still very much in contention as well, I think, for the title, and yet we sort of think about Quantum and Azura as being the ones that are fighting hard for it. So reality is, yeah, that the three of them are maybe separating just the tiniest bit from Brennanasek behind them and from Provezza behind that, as clearly with their mass at this point in time. But I think, yeah, for those three guys, right now it's about this regatta. Overall, they're always thinking in the backs of their minds about this series, and like you keep reminding us in every race, the more points they can put between themselves, between Quantum and Azura, the more they're happy about the overall series, and yeah, of course they'd be happy about this regatta as well. But yeah, sometimes you just take every race as it comes anyways, and you'd rather just win that race and have Azura right behind you than you would rather be, fifth in that race with Azura 10th. So those are the sorts of things you only think about in the last regatta.
Indeed, but conditions looking pretty decent. What's your strategy then this time, Jenny?
Yeah, again, I haven't actually seen the board of Maria at this point, so I think probably she's gone that 10 degrees left that they did on the finish line on the second downwind when they changed the course, and I think that makes it even just that much closer to that shoreline and makes it even that much harder to kind of want to fight for that while still wanting to be on the favored end of the line.
Yeah. But Sled have started pretty much in the same place both times. Does that then... Is it a little bit of a magnet to other teams who think, well, let's have a go there, or is it really open?
I think if we remember the two races yesterday, and even this one here with Team Vision Future, but the two races yesterday, there were a number of boats fighting for that boat end of the line. Sled was not the only boat there. There was Platoon, there were the two Phoenixes, there was Allegre as well. So it was at that point about executing, and Sled did a really good job of executing. So I said earlier, maybe it's a safe spot for an owner driver, but I wouldn't actually necessarily say it's an easy spot. So I think we might see more of the fleet up here. In fact, a lot of them headed up this way right now. We only have 2 minutes 30 to go, so no one really circling the pin hard, although Sled is actually down at the pin right now while we talk about it. But yeah, I think strategy is one thing, execution is very much always the second, and the teams that can execute, get off the start line, not be over, but have good speed to be able to hold on to their spot and sail away from everyone else as they go up the course. That's what Sled's really been able to do, and that's what other teams have sort of lacked over here on the boat end line.
So around about 2 minutes to go. starting to see what the teams are thinking in terms of where they want to start on the line. Nice aerial view. Gladiator very much on the left side. Allegra there, just making their last assessment. And Phoenix 11 there, Hasso-Plattner, listening to what his after guard are telling him they would like to do. Edo Stead, a really numerical sailor, very, very strong in the numbers.
Pablo, Maria, I need to have the line here. I need the line here.
And Team Vision Future looking like they'll shape up to start towards the committee boat. They like to do these what you might call safer starts in terms of not pushing into difficult positions in the main group, if you like. So Jenny, just over a minute to go. Take us through the start of race number 4.
Well, I do like, as you're saying, Team Vision Future is not shying away from this boat in the line. So last time they were over here at the boat, but they're going for it again. And I think that's good. I think they're going to have a bit of a fight on their hands here. Quantum Racing now coming up to this end of the line. It didn't work out well at the pin last time. We talked about Quantum being a little bit too early and having to do the double tack. Meanwhile, Quantum just now tacking underneath Team Vision Future. 35 seconds to go. Plenty of distance for them to get up to the line. In fact, I think they should be going for it, though. They're slowing just a touch. And then there's a bit of gap. There's Allegra, who's possibly even late to the line now, 25 seconds to go. And then down a bit more of a fight for middle pin. So Phoenix 11 probably late. Phoenix 12 almost bow on the line. Sled looking good at this point. Middle of the pack down at the pin. Platoon as well. 10 seconds to go. Gladiator probably closest to the pin. Brennensek high of that pin end gun, and it's 5 seconds. Brennensek thinking they're over. They've actually just gone bow down hard. 2, 1, gun, and now it's bow up, and it does look nice for
Individual recall bow 8.
Yeah,
Individual recall bow 8.
Fair enough. So that's what we were just about to say. It does look nice for them if they've pulled this off, but they did not pull it off. So unfortunately for Chimay Fontella, that's just one step too early, and that's going to hurt. I do think they might have the ability to claw through the fleet a little bit. We saw Team Vision Future nipping on the heels of the fleet in the last race, and Brennensek's really been able to move through. But again, it's difficult in this race course. It's a left-sided race course. Now, here's what we can see with Team Vision Future leaning up to the right, lining up to the right of Quantum Racing, is whether or not they're going to be able to hold it off. We've got the doppelgangers neck and neck with each other, and it's going to be a good task for Team Vision Future to try to keep even with Quantum Racing, but they're doing so far. Down the fleet, it looks like Gladiator's already been flushed. Yeah, I think we'll see them tacking shortly, and it was probably Azura who did the flushing. Meanwhile, one of the Phoenix boats, I think that's going to be Phoenix 11, much down at the pin.
Yeah.
Also looks like they're being squeezed with Sled to windward of them and Azura to leeward, and the other Phoenix boat holding on at the moment with Allegre to their windward. So a decent start for, the pin end guys. I think Platoon in the middle has plenty of room, so they can push hard and foot away as they'd like, or they can come up and fight a little bit with Phoenix. And maybe that's the spot where you'd really want to be. If you're not Azura, you'd be happy to be Platoon. Perhaps Sled or Platoon. Yeah.
Certainly Azura, in our image, the bow is forward and seem to have good pace. Next up to weather of them is Sled. And Phoenix 11 look to be quite strong as well. They've got a little bit of space to leeward of them. Able to keep their speed up, I think, maybe just about below them. Yeah, I think Platoon are just below them, so battle on for Phoenix 11 to try and hold their height. Allegra seem to start in the same position again, like 3 boats down from the committee boat. Quite strong relative to Quantum and clear of Phoenix 11. It is Allegra and Phoenix 11 that we have as the top 2 boats on virtual a few minutes after the start. Also Team Vision Future, so the right strong early on. The investment, though, is in the left with Azura and Sled. What do you think, Jenny?
Well, it's about winning, like we were talking about earlier with Sled last race, and now I would say with Phoenix this race. It's about winning the boat and then trying to foot down and hammer over the fleet if you can. And that's how you can really execute a winning strategy from a left-hand sided race course with a right-hand sided starting line. And I think it's a little bit difficult to do that in the 52s. There's not that much more acceleration when you bow down. There is some, but it's not huge. It's not like, say, the 49ers that Chimay sailing. So the reality is it's a bit hard for them to go and fight against Azura in that corner. And I think as we see them sail into the left a bit more, the question is then whether Azura can actually just get bow forward enough to be unhooked, to be able to tack and cross the fleet. And if they can't, then it's a winning strategy for the right. And if the left is strong enough that Azura actually can get out ahead and in that lefty tack and cross, then the left was strong enough that it overrides. And I think at this moment, it almost looks like Azura is starting to put the pedal forward, is going to start to show taking up some of the leader line, and is at some point, if more and more left comes, everyone else is going to end up bow down enough into them that they will be able to attack, and they should be able to execute, I think, a leading win from there.
Indeed, pretty much a classic Bay of Palma situation at kind of 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. Azura have won 2 world titles on these waters. Once as Matador back in 2009, and also as Azura in 2015. We've won the Copa del Rey here before, when the fleet was racing, or the 52 Super Series was racing as at the Copa del Rey. Platoon have been close. I think they've been on the podium here before, a couple of years ago. So very, very close. Great images from the water showing how tight this fleet is off the start line. Phoenix 11 trying to hang in there. We've got them leading closest to the windward mark, that means, really. But I wonder whether the advantage will fall Azura's way. Certainly no immediate gains to, well, Team Vision Future are credited with 3rd just now on virtual, Platoon with 4th. How much further do Azura go then, Jenny? They're just, I don't think they would cross Sled just now, would they?
No, it doesn't look like it. It does look like they're pinned at the moment. That Sled's got the full control of where Azura's going and is able to dictate.
Not much in it, though.
It's going to be, there goes Sled at this exact moment. Sled tacking, letting Azura off the hook. So now it looks like Azura is free to tack and choose when they'd like to come back. And the question is whether Sled will be ducking or leading against Platoon and against Phoenix. I can't actually see that from this moment. I think it looks like maybe they will be ducking Platoon here.
Ducking Platoon.
So for Azura, it's Azura's tacking now, and it's whether or not they will also then be ducking, or whether they have the cross, or actually Platoon tacking a leave out there on Sled. So it leaves the door wide open for Azura then just to come up and fight against Phoenix 12 and
Phoenix 11.
Phoenix 11, sorry. Eyes aren't that good right now, Andy.
No.
But I think Phoenix 11 I think they have the ability, to leave out here. So Phoenix 11 then should be taking charge of this race, leading them back in towards the top marks.
So it's Phoenix 11 who have the lead according to virtual just now, though I'd imagine the Azura will strengthen their hand on that left side, but Phoenix 11, Hasso-Plattner, Edo Stead, hugely experienced tactician, been in this fleet since the very first years, and has won the World Championship with Ran Racing. Raced with Quantum. So a question coming in from the social media is how long is the first leg, Jenny? Do you know? I would imagine it's about 1.8, 1.9 miles, something like that.
Yeah, I think it might have stretched a tiny bit this one. It was 1.8 last race. I want to say it's 1.9 now. So it looks like they had a long starboard into this left corner, and now they've basically got the long port back out of this left corner. I actually don't even see our weather marks by eye just yet. I see what looks like tiny little dots on the horizon, which is probably our two weather marks actually, but they've still got a ways to go, and it's going to be a kind of good drag race here between Platoon to Leeward, Phoenix 11 and Azura, and actually to me it looks like Azura might be just dropping off a touch in this drag race, that they've maybe starting to be affected a little bit by Phoenix 11, in which case there's not a lot of distance left to their left for them to have to double tack away. So yeah, perhaps they didn't give themselves enough room coming back in.
Great drag race, as you said, between Phoenix 11, Hasso-Plattner and Harmüller-Spreer. Big rivals. And head-to-head fighting for supremacy on this first beat, race 4. Looking at right side of the track, back on board with Team Vision Future. Michael Merbergui is the helmsman there. Newcomers to the fleet, going very, very well up this beat. In 7th place, furthest right of the fleet just now. Then looking back at the leaders, Azura to the right. Platoon seem to have got their bows forward on Azura just now. Allegri just under them. So say fairly classic Palma conditions, fairly classic Palma strategies. A little bit of a left side track, and I think Platoon's bow just emerging, Jenny. Just, yeah, I think Platoon just slightly quicker, strong position. Not quite as extreme as Azura out to that left side. On board with Quantum Racing. Quantum, once again, a little bit of work to do down in 7th place. Coming into the windward mark, first time up, race number 4. It's really all about the best port tack ley line in. Tend to get, if you get further to the left, the left-hander increases as you get up the course, getting closer towards the point on the left side, which creates this geographical lift. But at the moment, for me, Platoon have got it best. Platoon, of course, John Kostecki, but the strategist is Jordi Calafat, who was born and raised on this bay. Olympic gold medalist and indeed America's Cup winner, and a sailmaker with Quantum here. Phoenix 12 very much in the mix, just lured off Azura. So Sled, two wins back to back. Unfortunately, not able to impose themselves quite as much this time. different starting strategy for them in the mix on the battle for the left side. Coming off second best slightly to Azzurra and Platoon on that side of the course. So very much a drag race from the left now up to the top mark. Jenny, how are you seeing this race then on this left side of the course?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an interesting one that Sled decided to slide themselves down the start line. I think the reality was, and as we're seeing here, it was the safer play in a way. We definitely knew the left was favored. We definitely knew that it was coming out well for the teams. And yet to have executed twice in a row on the right, winning the boat, winning the race, to kind of stick to your guns and go, okay, fine, that's not necessarily going to be the winning strategy in the next one, I think is a good move. It shows that Murray Jones and Adam are making decisions on board well, and yet they didn't quite execute as beautifully. And perhaps they were being a little bit played with by Brennanasek. Brennanasek being over the line just really right next to Sled can be a bit disrupting. And then in that period of time where you've got the first and most important drag race of the entire race, to be a little bit distracted by someone near you who's over early is just maybe that you're not getting your first trim proper, or you're not hitting those waves exactly at the angle you'd like. And from there on, we saw Azzurra kind of able to stake a foothold to their left, and we saw Platoon sort of able to work away and give themselves some distance and some boat speed to their right. And yet now we see those two boats. I really think Azzurra has just not been able to hold on this ley line because they've been affected a little bit. Otherwise, it was those two boats that were fighting hard for the win.
So very much a drag race into this top mark, first time up. Anyone's race really between Allegre, Platoon, and maybe even Phoenix 12. I say the left-hander does tend to increase the further you come up the course. Just seeing the protector mark, if you like, the mark which protects the late port tack ley line. So we're just approaching that just now. Looking good for Allegre then, just now, Andy Soriano's team. Meantime, Sled, I think, forced to tack by Quantum. Quantum tacking underneath Gladiator. That's costing them just distance on their rivals. On board with Quantum. Just and that extra tack costing Sled a little bit. So I would say in terms of the big picture, the regatta, things looking good for Platoon. We're going to be coming into the work in the next few minutes. So great conditions, 12, 13 knots of breeze. We're approaching the windward mark of the second race of the day, race 4 of the Rolex TP52 World Championship. Team Vision Future appear to be in the mix, having kept themselves out of trouble on this first upwind. Just forward there off bow number 12, which is Phoenix 12. Allegre in the mix as well as we come round the spacer mark, the protector mark, if you like. Looks like there may even be a little bit of righty coming in. These leading three boats look to be very slightly headed. It's going to be a race to get out to the starboard tack ley line as the first tacks come in. Let's see how this plays out. There's Platoon then. Should be able to tack inside Allegre, complete their tack, and Allegre got a little bit of momentum there, but will be squeezed by Platoon. So top mark, first time up. Key moment in the regatta, I think, just now for Platoon, getting around the top mark with the lead. First time that we've seen them lead a race for a while. Second round is Allegre. Then Phoenix 12, Hasso-Plattner.
And then the really exciting news, Andy, who's outside Phoenix 12?
Exactly, Team Vision Future.
Could get.
Team Vision Future getting round in 4th place. Phoenix 11 in 5th. Azura, I think, round in 6th. Considering the start they had, and as Jenny said, just not able to make that left side work. Just getting a little bit of dirt from Allegra in the early or middle part of that beat. We're now at the offset mark, watching Team Vision Future going round, and then back to the windward mark as Quantum go round in I think 7th place or 8th.
You might have just missed Phoenix 11 doing circles there as well, so we didn't quite see what happened perhaps between them and Azura at the top mark, but just getting to do a penalty turn there on the offset, costing them 2 boat lengths, I think.
Indeed, so pretty tough day for them after yesterday. Penalties in both races. But and also a pretty tough day for Quantum all in all. And Sled then after their 2 wins coming round in 7th place, Quantum Racing 8th, Bernasek 9th and Gladiator 10th, I think. So the initiative, the impetus is very much with Platoon. Leading this race and now leading the regatta. Sled 5 boats behind him. Phoenix 6 boats behind him. They're pretty straightforward run, Jenny, isn't it?
Anyways, it should be. I mean, about as straightforward as that upwind was, which was not straightforward at all.
Okay.
But no, I think the run actually will be. I think the reality is we just saw a couple different things on that upwind where teams had the ability to go from 1st to 6th, and exactly like we saw with Azura, they went from what could have been a winning spot to 5th place, and yet we talked about it. We talked about how being to the right and having that boat side advantage really allows you to dictate and control where the fleet gets to go. And I think Team Vision Future did a great job of hanging in there against Quantum Racing, able to hang as long as they wanted and as long as they could, and they're reaping the benefits of a top 5 from it. I think Platoon, we've been saying that it's time for them to show their prime for the last 2 days, and that they're not even a dark horse, they're a contender, and Platoon's done just that. They're stepping up. They had a great start in the middle. They had plenty of room both sides. They were able to do their own boat speed and boat handling in a way that we know that team can do. And the team kind of pushing them hardest was Sled, who was happy and willing to give up their boat in the line, push down further along the line, give themselves a bit more of a solid, safe place, and yet it's not actually that solid and safe, as we saw with Azura, if you can't then get out and get across, and if you end up getting lead out by the boats on the right. So I think, Platoon nailing this, and we can see exactly why. And in that exact vein, that's what I mean about this downwind. The downwind is now going to be a question mark of jibing, and the boats are so close here compared to the last downwind where the boats were a bit more stretched out,
Yeah, you can
that
just
the jibe
see
will
Allegra,
matter.
Yeah, Allegra trying to protect against the Phoenix a little bit.
Exactly, yeah, and teams can really fight for that low lane here and to be able to be in a spot where you can jibe on someone's there next time. And Team Vision Future doing the same just behind Phoenix. And so I think while it looks straightforward and it sort of looks like the strategy is go right, jibe for the ley line, round the bottom marks, the unstraightforward part of it, the tricky part, and the really crucial part about executing perfectly will be when and where that ley line is and how you execute the jibe, and whether you have clear breeze as you come out or whether you're able to affect your opponent. So that's what we all should keep an eye on here. And between now and then, it might look simple, but everyone's jockeying for the position, as you're saying. Everyone's bearing away on each little wave that they can, each little puff, trying to make sure that they've got the ability to move forward. And I think right now, actually, it looks like Team Vision Future really moving forward on Phoenix 11. In fact, rolling over the top of Phoenix 11 here. So that that's already perhaps one space change if they can finish and actually roll over the top. They're forcing Phoenix 11 into a jibe, and this is an early jibe, or they're just easing their kite and bearing away hard to try to get their breeze clear again. But yeah, that's a big gain there for Team Vision Future. That's awesome for this guy.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it? Phoenix 12 just seemed to slow
it's not
very
really what
slightly.
you would expect either. I think when we say this is an easy downwind, you're not expecting in a straight line for a team and a team relatively new to the circuit to be able to pass someone. But I think the waves out here are just big enough and the breeze is just getting down a tiny bit enough that there's some major gains to be had here on the...
So Phoenix 12 choose to jibe. As you're saying, the key moment is that choice of when to jibe.
And I think, unfortunately for those guys, it probably wasn't really a choice. I think that was a decision dictated to them by Team Vision Future, and I think this could continue to hurt them as they sail away from the left-hand side and into what might be slightly less pressure here in the middle. I think we saw Azura make some losses last downwind last race when they jibed a bit early. So I think this could be a bit more bleeding for Phoenix 11, and a bit of a tough spot for Adrian Stead and Michele Evaldi to be in to have been just rolled like that.
So Azura 3 boats up on Quantum once again. Just on board with the defending world champions and 2018 champions. A little bit deep just now. Meanwhile, I think Platoon actually have probably moved just a little bit clearer of Allegra. Allegra, as you said, Jenny, that 10 on the first race of day one, but otherwise 4, 5, a top 4, top 5 today. But that's the projected points just now for this regatta. The Platoon would move well clear, 4 points clear at the top of the table. Phoenix 12, second, Sled third, Azura fourth, fifth, Allegra, Quantum Racing in sixth, Brennusek giving himself a little bit of a tough day, really. Too many unforced errors. Phoenix 11, 2 penalties. Team Vision Future doing well in this race, and then Gladiator. So Platoon then, starting to, I would say, sail the way they did when they won that World Championship in Scarlino. Just nice and steady and conservative in terms of strategy, but just able to execute, pick off boats here and there. And Morgan Reeser's message to them really seems to have played out okay so far, but it's only day 2, Jenny, isn't it?
Exactly. I think it is only 2. It's only race 4, but I think Platoon has the ability, and we've been saying that, to fight with the best of them. I think Brennusek is doing exactly what we're seeing, is making big errors and showing how costly those big errors can be, and they're kind of making it obvious in a way that maybe Quantum Racing maybe isn't quite making it so obvious, whereas they won the first race. They're just having deep races. Brennussek's doing big things, and Phoenix is doing big things that are noticeable drops, noticeable fouls, noticeable situations that are going poorly for them. And Platoon has said that's exactly what they want to minimize, not being over early and not having fouls. And all of us know how easy it is to make that decision to leave out someone when really you should have ducked and instead you lee bow, it's too close, and you have to end up doing spins, and you lose 4 boats instead of just losing the 1 boat that you should have ducked. So the bummer here for Platoon, guys, is they overstood massively the bottom mark. So actually you can see the whole fleet right now dropping kites.
Wow.
Platoons just dropped their kite. Huge right shift coming in then. Otherwise they wouldn't be having this problem if it was still staying in such a
Look at
lefty.
Team Vision
Platoon,
Future coming over the top of them with a kite.
Going to roll over both Allegre and they've just given it up there. But sorry to have missed that, but talking about how that jibe was the one decision on the downwind and nailing it was the only thing the teams had to do. Nobody has nailed it. I mean, even Phoenix, even Quantum Racing, they jibed well earlier, but they were not seeing this right-hand pressure. They were not jibing well early enough to be able to execute really on this. And I think
Team
the
Vision
bummer is we
Future
can
got
hear
themselves
Maria.
some problem, yeah.
Yeah, they're shrimping their kite at the moment, actually. I think I'm about to have a little bit of an issue with the Zura behind them, and that was just getting greedy there, trying to roll over the top of Allegre and Platoon, and they've actually got a fishing net of a spinnaker stuck behind them, which is going to be an issue to pull back in. I mean, they might have to cut the halyard away and try to go for the sheets or vice versa to well,
It's
no, I
coming
guess
in, I
the
think.
real only solution is just take it in slowly. But they're losing Azura to that. They might lose Phoenix 12 to that. They might lose Quantum, but nobody saw that coming. Nobody dictated what they should have done properly out of that. And in reality, the fleet positioning is staying much the same because nobody was really then able to capitalize on that huge right shift. You can hear Maria calling the course change as we speak. So I think it went from 180 to 205, which is a 25-degree shift to the right, and we definitely saw that on that downwind. So Platoon now rounding the bottom left mark, headed out to the left-hand side with about a 3-boat length lead to Allegre, but it is definitely not race course over, as we're seeing. It's really difficult racing out here at the moment and very tricky, and I would be full eyes out on board all the boats right now in a way that maybe some of the teams weren't on the downwind. They just got a little bit like lambs following each other to the left-hand corner, and I won't use the slaughterhouse analogy because no one actually did. It just ended up they all went the same way, and they've all now stayed in about the same positions. But there was a lot of room for movement there if someone had capitalized on it.
I think Azura
just
appears to
doesn't
have
look
gained
like.
a little bit, but they're going to end up on the left side. But,
Fair game, yeah. You'll take a third from a 6th place at any point in time, right?
Yeah, completely. But yeah, Azura's kind of ending up on the wrong side of this shift, such as it is. But as you say, no big place changes other than Team Vision Future. We're really still struggling. Really tough for them, having got themselves up to 4th and challenging for 3rd.
I'm so sad for them as well, because that was such a it's not a rookie error, it's just an easy error to make, to go, oh, we got it, we can hold this, let everyone get set up and ready, and then we'll take the kite down, and then you just don't quite execute the kite drop perfectly, and that's what's happened to them, and they've dropped out of 4th and into something more like 8th or 9th.
That's the thing, isn't it? The kite's strapped really hard coming into the leeward mark, and it's not something you'd practice very often on a windward-leeward course, is it?
No, it's something that you practice a bit more when you've got the trapezoid courses. Yeah, the coastal racing or the trapezoids, where you know there is just the slight chance if you have a reach that you might end up 15 degrees one side of spinnaker set or the other, and then it's the execution of taking that down. But we actually haven't seen such a big shift in a 52 series race in a really long time. So I think that would have been hard to know that was coming, and for these guys, just trying to get here with enough time to get their maneuvers, get their starts, get their tacks and jibes sorted. Who does what when? How do we keep the communication down and everyone get their stuff down? Then if you're going to throw in some of the perfectionist stuff of like, oh right, and how do we take a spinnaker down when we're really tight on the reach? That's a bit too far down the playbook for that team at the moment, and I think
of course.
we saw the error because of it. But you know what? I think again, we'll know that they were happy with 4th place. I think you come into the dock even after this race, even if say they get 8th or 9th or 10th here, they're still very much fighting, and they had such a long stretch of a drag race of an upwind there where they stuck with the team, and that's with the fleet, and that's what allowed them to even be in 4th place to begin with. So again, we should be happy for them, and they should be happy for themselves, I think, even just with one small error.
Yeah, absolutely, massive credit to them, and see, not overawed by this fleet at all, happy to do their own thing, happy to push from the start lines, and generally sailing pretty well. As we said before, really a great advertisement for joining the 52 Super Series fleet. You don't have to be coming in as a potential Quantum Racing or a potential Azura, potential Platoon. It's very much possible to come in, put a toe in the water as they've done, improve your sailing and that of your team, and have a fantastic time at the same time. Yeah, sure. So indeed, no real big changes then. Azura getting themselves up to third, Quantum I think in fourth. But really there's an indication of where we are in terms of the orientation of the course after that 25-degree shift. But all credit to Maria Torrijos, our race officer, making that move quick enough. But Platoon solid at over 100 metres ahead. Quantum seemed to have gained out of that very slightly, but just trying to catch up on the new course angles, the new geometry of this course. But credit to the team on Platoon, they were very quick to realise what was happening.
Well, I think the reality is, Andy, I think you just nailed it on its head. I think Quantum has the one who's really come out smelling like roses out of that big shift. They were sitting something like ninth, maybe 10th, and that 8th, maybe 9th, and it looks to my eye like they're sitting about third now. They might have even passed Azura, so that's a huge win for the Quantum team, and I think that will be a huge relief for them as well to not put two big scores up on the scoreboard. If they can hold into this top 3, top 4 at the moment, that's a much better day and puts them kind of back in contention in a better way. And I think it's difficult to be eyes out all the time when you're racing and when it's about to be coming into the bottom marks. But I think we know Ed Bayard on strategy there. They talked about how it's actually nice to have Doug DeVos back in because it frees him up to do that, to be eyes out. And I think it wasn't just about executing on the downwind and dropping the kite or trying to be in the position so you hold the kite longer. It was about what you then set up for the next upwind. Which mark is then the correct mark? What tack is then the right tack to be on, knowing there's a 25-degree shift and you're headed totally to a different spot in the race course and a spot in Palma Bay. And I think that's where they've really executed well, that they came around the right mark on the course and actually made big gains there against the guys who went left mark and closer to shore.
So typically Azura, unfortunately. But I mean, it was interesting because we saw some shots yesterday in particular of Ed Bayard in this strategy role and just coming into the marks. He's not watching at all what's going on board the boat. His one thing he's looking at is up the course and looking big picture. He's telling Cameron Appleton what he sees, and he's telling the rest of the team what he sees in terms of breeze strength, and that's the strategist role. And it was interesting to see him so very visibly watching the breeze and rather than just looking at boat for boat. And clearly that paid off just now as they got themselves up to fourth. And Azura, as you said, or I said, losing out, ending up on the left side of the course on a right shift, dropping behind Sled, and more particularly behind Quantum Racing, their main rivals. So we're on board with Quantum Racing there, just watching Doug DeVos on the helm. And Allegri really didn't, they consolidated, they didn't come out of that too badly, considering, and in actual fact, We're seeing a
No, I
little-
think in reality, we might see them fighting for the win here. They're about to have their intersection with Platoon. Platoon's just tacked from that left-hand corner. Platoon actually ended up well bow down in what looked like a left shift while Allegre was still in the righty. And in fact, yeah, Allegre now crossing the bow of Platoon. So Allegre has been able to take that little tiny right-hand side advantage of the bottom marks. They had rounded the right mark on the right side of the course while Platoon rounded what was the earlier previous left mark to the left side, and this has gone to Allegre's favor, and now they're planting one on Platoon. No love lost between those two teams for sure. Between the two American tacticians, Andy Horton and John Kostecki, have raced against each other a lot, and I'm sure Andy will be happy to put one up on a race which was previously being won by Platoon. But there's still a long way to go, and as we know now, it's a really shifty venue this afternoon, and there's still probably about half or a third of this race course left to go upwind. So there's going to be a good battle on here. Platoon just tacking out now from that bad air and look to be a little bit slow compared to Quantum Racing. So I think we could still see some movement on the podium between those two, and we could possibly see Sled come into the mix as well a little bit. They're just a touch further out to the right, so it depends if the breeze keeps going right a bit further. I think we could see Sled come back into play. I do think we could expect still to see some more lefties as well. I don't think it's just going to be a hard right and going right. So it's a really, really tough battle, as you're saying, to have the strategists keep their heads out of the boat. Allegre's just planted lee bow on Sled, so I think Sled's actually gained even more than I thought they had. They're fighting there for almost the first place against Allegre.
It did. Well, Quantum getting themselves right back into this race. They're down in 8th or 9th the first time up. Question from YouTube, will there be a third race? I think almost certainly not. General plan here is doing 2 races a day unless we get behind schedule. And thankfully so far, day 2, we're up to schedule. We're on race 4, which is really excellent news. Phoenix 12, then Hasso-Plattner, I think, holding second just now. I think we've just lost Allegre a little bit on the tracking. Allegre, I think, still leading, Jenny, on the water.
Yeah, I would have Allegre just lead bowed Sled, so Allegre still in the lead. Sled is a question mark then as to whether they're second and ahead of Quantum Racing and ahead of Platoon, or where they are in the mix between Quantum Racing and Platoon. Quantum has just tacked back, so soon we will know where they lie between the other ones, but I think they are ducking. Well, should I speak too soon? Yes, I think they are ducking Allegre as we speak. We actually saw their bow go down a touch there, so a close battle still for first place, and Quantum Racing really has gotten themselves right back into the mix. Platoon's just tacked back as well. I think maybe Quantum's made some gains to Platoon, and I think Allegre's made some gains to Platoon, so we might be seeing Allegre as the leaders, perhaps Sled in second. It does look like Quantum is going bow down again here and ducking Sled as well, but I will know a bit more in 1 second. Yeah, so Quantum crossing Sled, so Quantum has moved up into second or third there. It depends on how far back Platoon is, but I think reality, Allegre attacking now, and there's good distance between them and Platoon, so I think Allegre still leading, Quantum closely in second. Platoon is possibly dropped to fourth if Sled can get in between, and there's not that much distance to go now to the top marks. It's getting a lot lighter, so it'll take a good amount of time, but we are about to be sat at the marks, and we're only about 30 boat lengths upwind of these guys. So the next intersection here, Sled and Platoon coming up at the moment, and we know how it feels to go from leading a race to looking at losing your third place, and I think that is happening right now as Platoon takes the stern of Sled. So just that left side not working out in their favor, and they've gone from hero to off the podium for the moment, but there still is enough upwind and definitely tricky enough downwind like we saw last time for the places to change again.
Indeed, it's very, very tricky now. I think we're seeing a little bit less of the thermal effect in the old gradient pushing through from the right side of the bay, perhaps. And it's making it, certainly the breeze is considerably lighter, Jenny, isn't it?
Oh, massively lighter, and yeah, I mean, there's a big haze over the ocean as well now, which didn't exist earlier. So the sea breeze came in, the land heated up. We got a little bit of cumulus. We got that really nice 2 hours of sea breeze, and now you're right. It's probably just a touch of gradient, just a touch of cooling off again, that's allowing for funky conditions on the race course, and hard to read on the water as well. It's not like there's massive variations in breeze strength across the course. In fact, there's big enough waves still from when the sea breeze was up that it's hard to see the puffs even. So I think it's difficult times to make a guess on what's going to be the next step now that we know there's been this big right shift. The question there, what's going to win next, is a really hard one to answer.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'd rather be on the right side of the track where Platoon and Allegra and Quantum are, and trying to get in from the left.
Yeah, agreed. I think
the
two Phoenix teams
yeah.
struggling out on the left side will be deep in the fleet at this point.
Well, Phoenix 11 pretty much out of touch now, I think. So unfortunately, after yesterday, their kind of red letter day coming in at this point 24 hours ago, and second and third behind Sled, they're way down deep. Much lighter conditions, probably only got 7 or 8 knots, and as Jenny said, this little bit of leftover chop really making it quite tough. And I'm sure that we've had that question just in from the social media, just asking whether we would do a third race. I'm sure these guys will be glad to get ashore and reflect on this turning into quite a difficult, what we considered was going to be a typical Bay of Palma left side track. Well, it's pretty funky now. Very difficult to read the breeze on the water, far less predict what's going to happen next. But credit to Andy Soriano's team on Allegre. Andy Horton, Kelvin Harrop is the strategist, Will Best the navigator. Just keeping the power on to get through these little choppy waves. Sled just leeward and trying to hurt Quantum Racing. Cameron Appleton there poised, just measuring themselves against Sled, just keeping an eye on what Sled's little movements are. Sled starting to hurt them, I think, Jenny.
You know, I think they might be, except Sled's got the bad air of Allegre in front of them. So Sled is a little bit piggy in the middle, and they're just going to be hoping that they're able to hold off Allegre for long enough that they can affect Quantum and get around the mark and not end up getting shot out the back between the two. And I think it looks a little bit like Allegre actually just went bow down there. I'm not sure if that's a left shift or if it's just gaining for acceleration through a set of waves. If they do get any more bow down than that, then Sled will definitely be in their bad air, which might go to their help because Quantum will definitely then be in their bad air as well. But otherwise, those three teams really in kind of the drag race of this podium position at the moment, because it is only about 10, 12 boat lengths left to the top mark, but it has gotten very light here, and yet there are still the waves that dictate how they're sailing, and it makes it really tricky when you see that mark in front of you and you know you've got to keep all your speed as you can so you're not shooting the moon at the end of the mark, and yet it's really tricky.
Our angle, or on the drone shot there, we can see two different breezes, very definitely these first 4 or 5 boats coming up on port, and then you look at Brunanasek on the old lefty.
Oh yeah, massive lefty. Yeah, I mean that's what I was talking about earlier. We knew it would come back in, and it could come back in. Just not enough for Phoenix to take back with it, basically. So hard for Brunanasek because they're in a tough spot. They were in the lefty, and then they didn't quite use enough lefty to get to the right, and now they've actually just gotten the righty, and they need to be on port tack getting up to the mark. So we thought they might be able to make some gains from that, but it doesn't look like that. It looks like they'll be dropping back behind at least Azura. But meanwhile, Allegre is just, well, you know, I say they are just able to make the mark, but seeing the front of their jib already luffing at this point means they've still got a boat length and a half to go before they round, and it's going to be a slow, tantalizingly slow rounding for them with Sled creeping up from behind. They should make it, but it's not an easy task at the moment, and Sled's going to then be barreling over them as they come around this mark to the offset, to the swing mark. So that's Allegre around very slowly, very much giving themselves no distance at all, no quarter behind. As
But credit to Sled, I think first time up they were in 8th place. They're now up to 2nd coming round. And I think that will give them back the regatta lead, or a share of the regatta lead at least.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a good day.
Yeah, and it wasn't looking so good for them. Yeah, I mean they're all over it there. They've
this
got
could great. Oh, Sled with an early speaker. It wasn't. That's a
pretty punchy
maneuver for Sled to be filling their kite, knowing that they could have a lefty here. This is dangerous. I mean, right now it looks fine. They're in a big enough righty, but we did just see Brennadisek on about that exact same angle going dead upwind. So if either of them were to get that with their spinnaker up, we could see a Team Vision Future thing happen again. I just think that's a little bit risky. I wouldn't have gone for that necessarily, but you know, who am I to say that? We've got 4 boats here now with kites up basically, so they've got it nailed. They're confident in that right shift, and they've been able to execute it, and Allegre as well been able to execute it and keep Sled in their gas. So behind them, Quantum Racing into 3rd. Platoon not having their best spinnaker shot, filled the sheet before the kite was all the way up, so it took a little while of some extra grunt work to get the kite up on time. And here they go rounding in 4th with behind them Azura coming into 5th. So Azura at points there, going from 3rd to 6th back to 5th. I think this is as good as they could have come out of that, but still not having the best spinnaker set. They're just finally filling, and yet Brennadisek not really pushing hard on Azura stern with the spinnaker, and yet still going the exact same speed, if not faster. They're about to overlap Azura almost. So Brennadisek was happy now to go for the kite, but was happy to keep all their speed and all their distance going high and keeping their speed forward. While the rest of the fleet starts to round, we'll just take one quick peek. Quantum Racing has jibed. No one else has. So keeping an eye on that. There could be huge moves on the downwind. Quantum Racing could become the hero and be winning this race, or could fall deep, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. Phoenix 12 rounding the top mark now into 7th position. I think Gladiator just behind them in 8th place. Team Vision Future dropping to 9th after that shrimping episode earlier on the downwind, and Phoenix 11 just not making the left side work and dropping them into 10th spot. I think, Andy, at points they were in 2nd, weren't they, in this race? They were doing quite well up the first beat.
That's right, they were up in 3rd at the top mark first time up, I think. Well, sorry, Phoenix 12 were 3rd and Phoenix 11 were 5th. Top mark first time up, but that's a bold call from Quantum Racing coming down this run.
All right, those are the back markers. Looking forward through the fleet, it is only Quantum Racing and Brennadisek who have jibed at the moment. Everyone else holding into that left-hand side, which I am a bit surprised by. I mean, it was a big enough right shift that you would think you'd want to be on the opposite jibe, that you might expect even more right, and yet those guys setting and holding on starboard might expect even more left shift into the shore, but it's going to be really fun downwind, I think.
So is this rolling the dice, or do they see something? I think certainly looking at the pressure they have from the drone shot. There we go, the kite is very strapped just now. So maybe they're rolling into a little bit of a head. Yeah, in Quantum.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say those guys never roll the dice.
Yeah, I was going to say, probably. I said that, I thought, maybe not.
Yeah, you especially with Ed on board, it seems like everything is such a calculated, strategic decision period across everything to do with their team, even probably the kind of food they have for breakfast, and it usually works for them. And I think here today's been a really tricky day. Yesterday was actually really tricky as well. So we were kind of thinking easy Palma racing because we had one race that was relatively easy, but this race has just gone to show that it is never over till it's over here. And I think I like this. I think I like seeing the bold move of Quantum and Brennadisek. I kind of hope it goes their favor and not the way of the boats inshore, just because I do think this was a bit more eyes out to be ready for both the set on the wing mark and the early drive in the right shift. And I think we do know there's a lefty out there because we saw it on the upwind. So for the boats who went into the shore, I think they're just sailing and waiting for that lefty. But once you get the lefty, then you don't want to jibe. Then you want to stay.
That's the problem. You've got to come back from that side, don't you?
Yeah. So it's a bit easier for these guys, the decision making here. Stay in the right shift, jibe on the right shift. Then if a lefty comes later, you can actually capitalize on it, execute on it, and jibe back onto starboard for it. doesn't mean it's right.
So we're on board there momentarily with Quantum, but Allegra is still leading. Quantum we see up to second, having jibed early and come down this left side. Big separation now to the boats on the right, Platoon and Allegra. Brunasek ever punchy, really coming down the left as well. And Allegra having jibed away from Sled, I think. Azura kind of middle for diddle, really, just trying to play the averages a bit down this run. Try and stay in touch with Quantum. Very much looking at conserving as much of their series lead as possible, if not extending it. And to that end, the main rivals are Platoon and Quantum. So there we. So that's Ed Baird just right of picture, just behind the pedestal, I think. So just giving the feedback on the breeze. So considering we started in 13 or 14 knots of wind, we're now down at 7 or 8. I'd say they will be glad to get this race over. Pretty nerve-wracking affair at times. Sorry, Jenny, go on.
At this point, it's almost a 60-degree right, I want to say. So the last time we saw the change of course to the downwind, it was a 250. This time, the course to the finish line is 055. So that's 55, 60 degrees exactly, 65 degrees from what we saw 2 races ago. So that's a huge difference in play, and it's not quite easy for me to see by eye how it's gone for Quantum. I think perhaps you were saying that it is still to Allegra's benefit on the far side, but is that what you're still saying now that Quantum has jibed and Brunasek has jibed out of this left-hand side? How does the lineup look? It looks like it maybe hasn't gone their way after all.
I don't think so. You know, we only saw their angle very momentarily as they jibed. It wasn't looking very pretty. They came out at a very high angle, but it may just have been the need to come out fairly hot in this bumpy, light, fickle breeze. But equally then looking at Brunasek and Azura going back towards the Platoon. Platoon, I think, have done quite well. Remember, this is going to be all about who leads the regatta today. Certainly between Platoon and Sled. If Platoon can get through the line ahead of Sled, then they will lead the World Championship. If Sled get through, then it's their lead. Both were tied on 11 points going into this race. And Platoon, of course, are 2017 World Champions. Spoke with Victor Mourinho, the runner trimmer on board, and he said it was so much more difficult in this fleet now compared to 2017. So you really have to make no mistakes, or as few mistakes as possible, and Platoon are going very, very well today, and have been pretty consistent so far. 4.52. But Jenny, just watching Platoon jibing just to the right of Quantum. Very, very tricky conditions to make these manoeuvres in.
Yeah, really tricky. I mean, the thing is, the runaway wind here is Allegra, so they've doubled or tripled their distance of lead, and I think good for them as well. It shows that that side of the course was okay, and I think Platoon hopping their jibe in where they were just there means that they're happy to go back to where they were, and they maybe didn't have the piece of Quantum that they wanted. So it's it's a good spot to be. As Sled comes back across right now, that's the kind of question mark that you're asking, who's going to beat who in this, and it looks like Sled has the early advantage against Platoon here, and Sled's crossing the bow of Platoon. And so again, if I was Platoon or if I was any of those guys, then it means you're happy to go back more, eat more into that coast side, left-hand side on the upwind, right-hand side on the downwind, because maybe there's just that tiny bit more breeze over there. Maybe there's the funneling effect.
Yeah, I think there's, when you see the cliffs in the background, there's definitely some acceleration down that side, and usually that's where you see the lefty. Further left the racecourse is. You can see what causes that.
Well, gosh, there's a whole lot of Coriolis effect of the northern hemisphere that causes that. I think it's just maybe beyond our pay grade at the moment to explain or discuss. But yeah, typically the left-hand side of a northern hemisphere coastline with breeze coming down from what we could say is above it, essentially means that it funnels just like what we're seeing here. So we saw it earlier today. We saw it again now. The righty, kind of because of the gradient, when it got hazy offshore, meant we had that big right shift, but we did keep saying that the left easily could come back in. And I think the ability to have the confidence in it, like Allegra just did, and ultimately like Sled just did, is great. And they've benefited and reaped some benefits from it. So the fight now a bit between Platoon and Quantum Racing. I think Platoon actually has just been able to kind of crush over the top of Quantum Racing, rolling over the top of them. The Quantum is now not jibing out because A, the finish line is further over that way, and B, there's not really any more gains to be had on this left side as they've just determined. So it's a bit of a tricky ask here. I think for Quantum, they just got to stick and try to get their breeze clear and maybe just be happy with fourth. It's better than the 8th or 9th that they were on the first downwind.
Indeed, but as I say, the battle is between Sled and Platoon for the regatta leadership. Upper hand is with Sled, Takashi Akura. After guard firing really well, Murray Jones and Adam Bichot. But all credit to Allegri. Yeah, sorry, Jenny, go on.
It's nice to get to see Murray back out racing himself. I mean, I think he spent much of the last 2 years, if not the last 6 years, supporting his daughter Gemma in her NACRA campaign toward first Rio and now Tokyo. Prior to that, he was coaching the Oracle team for the 2013 Cup and then some in the 2017 Cup. So I think for him, it's kind of nice to stretch your legs and stretch your mental capabilities and be back on board in a way that I'm sure he hasn't forgotten, but just that he hasn't.
No, God, no.
While he did the other things. So yeah, it's nice to be reaping the benefits from that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's did a little bit in the last couple of years on the Momo, I think it was, as strategist, came on board there, and also raced quite a lot in the J-Class Ranger. But he's in the fortunate position of being able to pick and choose or work these circuits in around supporting Gemma. I think we'll see him on Sled a little bit more. However, just ahead of Platoon then as they come down towards the finish. But first win of the regatta, Jenny, for Andy Soriano and the Allegra team.
Yeah, and well played to them as well. It was a really tough race, as we know. I think they were constantly fighting and in the battle from off the start line through to the top mark, never letting go on the downwind. Maybe just executing that drop in that bottom mark, picking the right side, the correct side, which also happened to be the right side at that point in time. And yeah, benefiting from it here. They're sitting 9th overall going into today with a 10 and a 4. So for them to 10 and 4, I think a 9 as well last race. So for them to clean out the day with a win, that's going to make the team happy. And I think a really well-earned one. I think this might have been the hardest tactical race we've seen yet, actually.
Indeed, but there they go, coming through the line then, Allegra. Gone for Randy Soriano and a few handshakes. Acknowledgement to the race committee. Thanks for the race. Kelvin Harrop, their strategist at the back of the boat, as we're watching now how second place plays out. And that will indeed be Sled. Sled 1-1-2, Jenny, not bad. Rhetorical question really, but Sled started with that 9th in the first day, but since then they are the form team. I think a certain hunger aboard, having been forced to miss Cascais, which has hurt their potential to finish on the podium this season, but nonetheless here they are leading the World Championship. Then Platoon coming through in 3rd. Quantum Racing will get 4th. Bear in mind that Quantum were very, very deep early on, I think down in 9th place, top mark, first time up.
Yeah, I think that's the comeback of the day. They did an even better comeback than Brunello yesterday, which was the comeback of yesterday. So nice job to the Quantum Racing team, and I think will help ease their disappointment a little bit in how they've performed today.
Meantime, pretty tough for Azura, considering they executed what you might call the textbook Palma Bay start, get out to the left early, but then they just struggled in the top half of the beat, just weren't able to make that left side pay. Also ended up on the wrong side of the shift at the leeward gate, and end up behind Quantum Racing, coming through in 5th place. Then Brunello, Jenny.
Yeah, Brunello into 6th position there. Very closely behind them, Phoenix 12 in 7th. Brunello was up and down at points in that race. I think they were 3rd almost at points. Then we saw them all the way out on the left in a lefty going on the upwind where we thought it could have gone even worse. So a 6th, I'm sure they will be disappointed with that. They've been fighting better than that, but they've also had a couple errors today and a couple missed opportunities. And so 6th is better than some of the guys behind them, and they'll have to keep that in mind. But I think they'll be chomping at the bit. And same for Tina and the team on board, Phoenix 12. They're absolutely not going to be that happy with today with that race or the previous race. I think they just coming off 2/3 yesterday and off of winning overall to get a 6th followed by a 7th. I think it'll be a disappointing, understandably disappointing day, and drops them off of the podium altogether, and they'll have a major fire in them. And yet Gladiator just came in, and then there's again a very tight battle here. Team Vision Future just rolling in to the finish, bearing away, and they've got it in front of Phoenix 11, but Phoenix 11 was able to put some guns on downwind and get back in the mix a little bit after having been deep at the top mark. And I think again for the Phoenix team, they haven't had an amazing event so far, Phoenix 11, but they did have their 2nd yesterday, and they've had a deep day today. So they'll be licking their wounds, and they'll be debriefing together, those two boats, and trying to see what made Sled's day go so well today, and why other teams were able to execute, why Allegre was able to win this race. And we probably have better eyes on that than they will, but they'll be looking back at these races just like we are, and trying to make takeaway from that.
Indeed. I mean, I take the rap for mentioning the words a fairly simple downwind. It seemed to go bad after that.
We've done a lot of jinxing this week, Andy.
Oh, we have.
Me too.
Anybody want jinx tomorrow? We're available. But anyway, let's have a look at the replay for race number 4. 2nd race of the day. Was pretty funky in the second half, but started out fairly textbook Palma conditions, James.
Yeah, fairly standard as we're seeing last couple of days. We're just coming down to the start now. And unfortunately for Brunello, as we saw, a big dip for them in that race. But getting called over, you can see them tacking just in the middle of the picture there and having to dip back down past the start line to exonerate themselves. Team Vision Future early on in the race looking very good to windward, with the rest of the fleet stacked up to leeward of her on board with the team right now, looking very relaxed and confident as they made their way up the first beat. A couple of exchanges here. Platoon slam tacking right in front of Sled there, and Phoenix just sliding across the bow with Allegre coming into the mix. And from there on the upwind beat, it really was a bit of a drag race between the lead pack into this top mark, all coming in on the port ley line as they approach. Team Vision Future were looking still very good at this point as they came into the ley line, getting ready to come back in on starboard. Platoon led the pack around. Hot on her heels were Allegre, followed by Phoenix. And then as they stretched off downwind, we can see a nice little battle starting to form behind Platoon. Team Vision Future again really putting the heat on these much more experienced boats in this downward leg. And we can see Team Vision Future holding their kite when everyone had overshot the ley line. They try to hold it as long as possible, going for quite a powered up sort of drop with the kite there. We can see it's starting to lose control and then going for a bit of fishing and losing the kite into the water, which unfortunately put that team behind for the rest of the race. You can see Azura again overshooting that ley line. It was quite shifty up there. Coming into the bottom gate, Platoon still had the lead at this point, going for the left-hand gate, followed by Allegre, who chased around the far side. And you can see from the graphics here, Platoon going up the left-hand side, followed by Azura, Allegre, and then coming back to Quantum, who took the right-hand gate. Quantum really started to look good at this point here, making a few very good decisions. We jumped on board there for the tack. And as we can see, with the course change after that huge 25-degree wind shift, there was a new destination for the top mark. And as the boats started to come into an exchange here, tacking in front of each other as they get to the top mark, Allegre doing a fantastic job edging ahead and putting the rest of the fleet behind. Allegre, Sled, and Quantum it was into this mark. We can see a very, very early deploy from Team Sled trying to get in over the top of Allegre. Allegre matching suit and going for a very early deploy as well as they went off down to the stretch mark. And as they made their way into the the downwind leg, we can see Quantum starting to stretch to the right-hand side of the course, looking for a different breeze. But as these boats came back for the cross, you can see the ley line right there. Allegre doing a fantastic job, putting Quantum behind it and starting to stretch off into quite a healthy lead as it was, as they came down to the finish of race 4. Allegre doing a fantastic job. Andy Soriano doing a great job taking race number 4 with Sled behind her in second, Platoon in third, and Quantum just behind, just missing out on that podium, taking 4th. What a fantastic day of racing, Andy, and a little bit lighter in that final race.
Indeed, a little bit lighter, just the breeze changing completely with the gradient coming back in from that right side and making it quite funky. A little bit unexpectedly, and it was all about how you reacted to these changes, as we saw Team Vision Future struggling just a little bit, Azura doing quite well initially, but the key gains then really were Quantum Racing, who were down in 8th or 9th at the top mark, getting themselves up to I think 4th through the line, that really keeping their hopes alive. But there we have it, the race result for race 4. Top place is Allegre. Interesting, doing the least tacks and jibes of the entire fleet. 13 tacks and jibes through the race. Sled in second place, Platoon third, Quantum Racing 16, pretty good, but it's these boats who are doing the 17 tacks and jibes who are not quite so good. But anyway, Platoon keeping themselves in contention for their second world title in third place there. Quantum Racing, as I said, getting back up through the fleet from 8th or 9th. The windward mark, first time up, getting themselves up to 4th. Unfortunately for Azura looking good early on in that race, but ending up in the middle of the fleet with her 5th, but still pretty solid. Granasek over the start line, unfortunately, but fighting back to 6th. Phoenix 12 in 7th, Gladiator 8th, Phoenix 11th in 9th, and Team Vision Future, well, unfortunately paying heavy price for losing the kite over the back of the boat on the approach to the leeward gate, and that really costing them. So there are the standings after 4 races at this Rolex TP52 World Championship here in Puerto. We're on day 2. And Sled, Takashi Akura's team, lead the World Championship on 13 points, 1 point up on the past World Champions platoon. Allegre move up to 3rd place from 8th this morning. So fantastic day for Andy Soriano's team, getting themselves into contention. Quantum Racing in 4th, Azura 5th, tied on points. In fact, there you go. There are 4 boats all on 20 points. Allegre, Quantum Racing, Azura and Phoenix 12. Renesec making just too many big errors and having to fight back too often. They're in 7th place, Phoenix 11 and 8th, Gladiator 9th, Team Vision Future in 10th, and Provezza unfortunately still on maximum points due to their mast breakage. We believe we should see them back tomorrow, James.
Yeah, it was a big ask to really get the mast here in time to get out for racing today, and we did entertain the thought of them joining us for the second race of the day, but I think they made a wise decision in
no, of course, I think
time.
They may be out in the water. They'll certainly be out in the water as early as they possibly can to get the rig tuned. It's a very, very different situation. It's an older mast which won't necessarily fit with the sails that they have. So it's a big question for them what sails they use and whether they have some of the older sails. So they'll just be working through that just now and trying to establish what the best setup is for tomorrow. But hopefully we will see Provezza back tomorrow, and all credit to everybody involved for getting the mast here and getting it up. Jenny, your thoughts on the day? It's been interesting, and Sled going ahead into day 3 with the lead in the World Championship.
Oh, I just think it's fabulous to see. You know, we've said the last 2 regattas, the last 3 regattas this year, all were within 1 point coming down to the finish. And to see at the moment 1 point between the top 2 boats, and it's Sled and Platoon. It's not even any of the teams that were 1st or 2nd yesterday. And then to see 4 teams tied for 3rd position. I mean, you couldn't ask for closer racing than this. And I think we've seen the Bay of Palma not as easy as many people think it is. We know tomorrow is already a tricky forecast. We've got rain in the forecast. We've got not necessarily the sea breeze conditions that seem to be so easy here anyway. So I think reality is, even as we see Renesec going behind us, they're just 1 more, 2 more points back from that that tie for 3rd place. So I think it is going to be really, really, really tight racing all week. And I think today was spectacularly interesting racing. And I think it's going to be even more exciting tomorrow when we get Provezza out on the water and we get to see all these racehorses full firing, no matter what the conditions bring us tomorrow.
So we're going to need an umbrella tomorrow, Jenny. Yes, indeed. Well, we are expecting a little front to come through at some point tomorrow, and with some rain, so that's going to make it very tricky. James, great job today. Join us again tomorrow. We'll be live with the Rolex TP52 World Championship here in Puerto. Do join us then.